All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Take two. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to remain standing, please, for a moment of silence in honor of all of those that have lost their lives in the state of New Jersey to COVID-19, as well as for all of our frontline workers. Thank you. Can we call for, so Mark Moon is on the call now, and is Councilman Cooper on? Can you unmute everyone, and then we can see if he answers, please? Sorry. And then we can go back to the other one. Councilman Cooper, are you on the line?
$7 each, and
Councilman Cooper?
Hello? I'm trying to get Councilman Cooper on the line.
Councilman Cooper?
But he's not on the line there.
Okay.
Isaiah.
So do you want me to reach out to?
All right, so let me, sorry. I have Councilman Cooper on the line right now. I'll give him the information
reach out
after
to
I
him.
do. I have Councilman Cooper on the line right now. I can reach out to him afterwards. If I can reach out to him after I give my report, if you'd like.
Okay. Okay. Everyone can hear me now? If you can nod your heads. Okay, thank you. Alrighty. If I could have a motion, please, to open to the public for any comments on the agenda.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you. Anyone from the public wish to comment on anything on the agenda this evening? You'll have to unmute yourself if you want to speak. Mr. Lane is raising his hand. Mr. Lane?
Michael Lane, 51 First Street, Keyport. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I have a number of items on my checklist that I would like to ensure I get some information on these items tonight. Resolution 162-20, approximate estimated tax billing to generate $20,084,398. What is the estimated tax rate that's going to be utilized to define my tax bill? So if you could cover that during your reports, that'd be great.
Okay.
Communications. One communication item that I want to bring up is that the Keyport Yacht Club, which is going to pay over $27,000 in taxes this year, sent a letter to all Keyport Borough Council members outlining a proposal for pedestrian safety improvements and traffic calming via a four-way stop at the intersection of Atlantic and First Street. The concept of a four-way stop for pedestrian safety is already identified in the circulation element of the 2017 master plan. Has the KYC input or letter been forwarded to CME And why was the KYC communications on this really important issue not listed in today's agenda? And also, has the full-time borough employee who is responsible for the $569,000 grant that we worked very hard to get in place for First Street traffic calming been identified yet? Councilwoman McDermott, regarding zoning report, would you please cover the status of the enforcement action related to the 3/22/18 Keyport Unified Planning Board resolution defining the rear property line at 2.9 feet behind the cabana at 317 Beer Street? Thus, the need for removal of the wetland infringement created by the extended lawn behind the cabana and the fence enclosure, which is necessitated by the fact that in the deed and in the resolution, this is not land that is owned by the homeowner. And also, would you identify whether you have obtained input from Councilman Good regarding his insights as a member of the Keyport Unified Planning Board who voted for approval of this resolution, and Councilman Fotopoulos, who also voted for the approval of this resolution and has a role in terms of protecting the wetlands as a member of the Keyport Environmental Commission. Finally, Matt, regarding planning board report, would you again go over who is responsible for verifying that all the conditions for the resolutions for Green Grove, Bay Point have been implemented? And that was new parking. And when are we gonna finally get the condition for 25 East Front that the pump station be implemented? And my last item, Dennis, on your report regarding the Keyport Harbor Commission, would you provide input on how the unsafe condition that was created by the outfall pipe is going to be resolved, and also how we're going to avoid impacting the parking for the boat ramp, trailers, and for the fishing boat with the NPP flood gates that would close down American Legion Drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. I believe Mr. Kelsey might be raising his hand. But I can't. No, I lied. Okay, so we're gonna have to take off mute, Michelle, so anyone on the phone that we can't see on the monitor. Are there any members on the phone that would like to speak about any items on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. You can state your name and address for the record, please.
John Merla, 34 Broad Street, Keyport.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Can you
Go
hear
ahead.
me?
Go ahead,
Okay.
John. I interrupted.
Okay, no problem. I didn't get a chance to review the agenda, shame on me, but I would think this is on it. Is there the water plant on the agenda?
It's probably under committee reports, but that it went online and that, you know, there were some hiccups in the first 2 weeks of it.
Or are the hiccups over?
Yes.
Okay. Has the water been tested up at the water plant?
Yes.
What was that question?
Has
I
I didn't
the
hear
water
that question. Can you
been
repeat?
tested?
He asked if the water had been tested.
Got it.
Yeah. I was
Anything else,
asking
Mr. Merla?
Not at this moment.
Okay, great. Thank you. Someone else wanted to speak?
Yes.
Elmer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place.
Hi, Mr. Graham.
Hello. Good evening, council. Can you all explain Resolution 16720?
Mr. Graham, I can handle that.
Yeah,
That's part of the neighborhood preservation program, the grant program that the borough is part of. An aspect of the plan was the installation of mural art in certain properties. And that is just authorizing the borough to enter into a license agreement with the property owner. Basically, they're going to let us put a mural up on the building.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else from the public? I think there's a few more people on the phone that it looks like they're muted. Maybe they muted themselves. Okay. Okay, just give it one more minute just in case anyone has a hard time finding their mute button. If anyone's on the phone that wants to speak during public that may have wanted to, you have to unmute yourself if you're on the phone. Okay, great. Can I have a motion to close to the public, please?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we'll go into committee reports. Councilman Fotopoulos, were we able to connect with Councilman Cooper?
I'm here, Mayor.
Oh, great. Hi, Councilman Cooper. So you're on roll call now. Thank you.
Yeah,
Do we have any
no
committee reports?
report. No committee report
Okay,
at this
thank
time.
you. Thank you. Councilman Fotopoulos?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. The Board of Health collected a total of $3,195.60. As we anticipate the opening of restaurants in the not-so-distant future, we need to do our best to prepare to help restaurant business neighbors and to prepare for the restrictions that will be imposed on them, albeit less than what is imposed now. I've had some discussions regarding this nature with some of the restaurant owners and also who reached out to me, and also there have been some ideas expressed in other conversations with officials from other municipalities. I'd like to make sure that all the health and safety issues and guidance are clear for them, and that we do our best to help the restaurant businesses to ensure they are operating within the bounds of the law and the guidance that's sure to be set forth by the governor at the state level. I'm talking about seating requirements, capacity requirements, PPE requirements, cleaning requirements, etc. And then one thing we might consider is, when thinking outside of the box, we could eliminate the parking on the south side of Front Street temporarily to allow for a walking path in the current parking area, which in turn would allow for outdoor seating for some of the smaller restaurants along that south side of the street. The restaurants that are on the north side of the street, Berluz and Nemo, they actually have seating in the back that's on the exterior and could possibly be expanded as well. So I'm trying to think of the ones that are on the north side, on the south side. We want to try, hopefully, to help them expand their capacity. I look forward to working with the mayor and council as we approach and embrace what is inevitably going to be an easing of restrictions on our neighbors and our business constituents. As far as recycling goes, please go to KeyportRecycles.com. That's KeyportRecycles.com for recycling and waste management updates. We do update the borough website as well, but the Keyport Recycles website is updated in real time along with the borough website and might contain some more in-depth information as far as questions and answers are concerned regarding changes and updates with rules and restrictions as the COVID-19 crisis continues. Donna Purcell, our Board of Health Secretary, has been working hard hand in glove with our DPW Superintendent, Bob Kutchman, to ensure that all collection services performed by the borough have been maintained, and where there have been new restrictions established, such as the closing of the Florence Avenue recycling facility, curbside pickups have been implemented. While we knew this would happen, given the facility closure and the folks doing an inordinate amount of yard work under the circumstances with the stay-at-home orders early on, the DPW and Health Department continue to stay on top of branch, leaf, bulk, and recyclable pickups when not handled by our garbage hauler. They're doing a great job. The Environmental Commission reported that the Green Team met and went over the submission and the points that were received. The brownfield inventory was accepted for points, and we maintain our bronze status, and we look to move towards a silver status. There's a letter from the Green Team chair, JP Polchak, that is asking for assistance filling out the roles on the Green Team, and I'd like to offer my assistance in helping with that if I can. We're going to, Joe Sheridan actually initiated the Christmas tree effort back late last year, early this year, and a few of us inspected and reinforced the entrenched trees where they sit. They're solidly entrenched, but we did a little more shoring of the trees at a social distance, and I'm happy to report that both the trees are holding in place and those grasses are just looking incredible, and they're going to go a long way towards mitigating some of the flooding and erosion that has happened over the many years at this beach at Cedar Street. The dune is becoming immense, which is the goal, and that's wonderful. Beach cleanups have been were canceled in April, and they're still scheduled for October, obviously TBD. We're going to hold off on the tree purchase and distribution this year until after the COVID-19 emergency has been eased. It's been suggested that we push it back until the appropriate time to plant the trees, specifically spring of next year. That might give us some time to try and earn the Hardy Plant Grant again as well. Vice Chair Mike Palmisano asked for a meeting with Chief Hafner, Borough Police Commissioner Pacheco, which will also be attended by Chairman DeGroat and I. We'll be discussing the hazardous nature of the First Street regarding speed, passing lanes, and crosswalks. We also discussed the Nisi pipeline, which to our glee, we recently found out was denied. There is no meeting next month. Mr. Lane asked me to comment on the unsafe condition created by the outfall pipe. And we did actually, I wasn't giving the Harbor Commission report tonight. That's going to be Councilwoman Pacheco. But the outfall pipe originally was going to be marked by a pole and a light. It was determined at the Harbor Commission meeting that the pole and the light was inappropriate and might pose further hazard to boaters who might mistake it as a guiding light rather than a prohibitive light. So we are going to put a sign up on a pole that delineates the hazard in the water, and hopefully that answers Mr. Lane's question. If not, I'm sure we'll hear about it in public session. We can have a further discussion on it.
Yeah.
That's my report for this evening. Thanks for your patience. It was a long one. I appreciate it. And thanks again for letting me serve my community.
Thank you. Just to piggyback though, real quick, Councilman Papadopoulos, you mentioned about outdoor seating.
Yep.
Anyone that's inquired has been
There's
referred.
an echo that you have right now, Mayor. There's an echo that I can't understand.
Yeah, you don't. Hold on one second. Thank you. You there's still an echo. I don't know why. Is
that better, Councilman?
Is that better, Councilman?
There's still an echo, Mayor.
Are you muted, Michelle? How about now?
Good.
No, it's good.
Okay. Councilman Papadopoulos, just so you know, anyone that's inquired about outdoor seating, there is an ordinance already on the books that they would have to follow with getting approvals, and it would have to go through the police chief, the construction and zoning, and then come to council. And that has been posted on the borough website just for easier reference.
Sure.
So we can't just alleviate anything. So just so you know, that has been posted in case anyone else reaches out to you.
May I
Okay.
comment?
There's an application they can fill out and an ordinance, of course.
Yeah, so as you know, I know that I'm looking for even more of an easing of restrictions eventually, depending on what they're facing. You know, if we need to open up the sidewalk, that's going to require further action on our part. We don't have to discuss it now. It's just something that maybe as decisions are made, we can bring it to fruition. There are restaurants on that side of the street and on East Front that don't have access to a patio area, which has been established as the outdoor seating within the ordinance. So,
Right. So the sidewalk and the easement, then they would just have to apply because they would have to have certain safety features put in. So, and they would have to present that plan to zoning. So all of that's spelled out in the ordinance. So if you want to just refer them to
Yeah.
there, so then they can get the application started.
absolutely.
Great. Thank
It's
you.
open for discussion too. Thanks. That was what I suggested.
Councilman Good?
Want to look into the ordinance temporarily.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to the fire department, for the month, they had 18 calls totaling a shade over 85 man hours, bringing their year to date of 75 calls and 571 hours. I would also just like to thank both our volunteer firemen and the first aid for everything that they are doing, especially with these in the state of emergency and the health issues that really is causing the state of emergency. I know that for their service above and beyond that, Aberdeen actually sent the first aid some money to thank them for helping run some calls, many calls actually, in Aberdeen while their response is somewhat in flux. So not only are our first aid serving Keyport, they're also serving the surrounding communities in an excellent fashion. With regard to the planning board, we haven't received any new applications. The last planning board, we did receive a request for an extension on Browns Point Marina. That request was moved. It was deferred to the next meeting for us, the planning board, to hear from the principals about why they are looking for the extension and to what extent they've actually done it during the time. I know that there are a number of items that are necessary for them to even pull building permits on the multi-family structure. So we want to definitely hear more about that. I think that Mr. Lane was asking me about who enforces the planning board's orders, or at least the resolutions, and I think that's either going to be, I think that's the zoning officer, but again, it depends upon what specifics we're talking about. With regard to the 317 Beer Street, I think the fence issue, I reviewed the resolution and the stipulations or the conditions that were placed upon the owner were removal of, I believe, a shed as well as a deck. The fence was not listed as necessary to be removed. The question becomes then, what is the borough's role in really policing boundary disputes? And Unfortunately, the borough doesn't have, unless it is borough property, do that. We don't know whether or not the landowner behind, of which the fence is allegedly encroaching, allowed for the fence or anything like that. So to that extent, there is nothing for the borough to do. And I think the last was the pump station. I'm not sure that, I'm not sure about the question. I think this was with regard to, I know one of the applications we had last year, and that who was the owner of the pump station. But I thought that was determined that the townhouses were. I honestly, I'm going by memory now, so I can't recall. But I don't know what specifically Mr. Lane's referring to. So if he would, I guess you could pull that up when public comment is available, just at least give a little more information. And if I don't have an answer there, I'll look to get back to it. So, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman McDermott?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank all our borough employees, as well as department heads and the Keyport Fire Department for working across the barriers to help resolve a fire that was in our neighboring towns. And also is what they always do. I also want to thank the Keyport Police Department for their work. We did have an issue over the weekend where we had excessive garbage that was noted and sent over. And besides the fact that we had because we had 50% of the lot opened up at Fireman's Park. So again, because of COVID-19, garbage cans were pulled away at protection of our DPW staff. So we had garbage cans that were full to capacity. And now, as a follow-up to that, is we are going to pull out all our garbage cans out and keep them back to, I guess you would say, normal standard. And in the weekends, we will have DPW staff available to clean Saturday and Sundays, any extra garbage and replace bags and all that stuff. And they did help the reason I'm saying is they also help patrol and make sure that at least there was some respect and order to patrons who did just, visit our area. So, again, they worked with us quickly to make sure that gets done. I also want to thank Clean Communities also coming in on Saturday morning to help, or Saturday afternoon to help clean it up as well, because again, it kind of came in last minute because we didn't expect, we were still at COVID-19 capacity, and we didn't expect this influx of patrons to come in and visit Keyport Fishery and just kind of stay in the neighborhood. So I want to thank everyone who kind of worked together to get that done, and as well as our borough administrator, Tom. Regarding the DPW fire water plant, what had happened is there was some issue with some colorization. What had happened, they actually went back, they shut it down, went through, cleaned it, and it's actually running open. And also what we did also in lieu of this, we usually do most of our, and I get Matt and Mr. Councilman Good can attest to this. We usually do flushing of our hydrants a little later. We did it early on to ensure that we had no debris or sludge in the water. So that's been all taken care of. So at this point, there's been no complaints known to us of brown water for our water plant. So that's good news. But again, apologies to anyone who was impacted by that. Regarding construction, as we all know, we all found out last Friday from our governor that zoning now, construction for anything pretty much is open. So as this evolves, we will continue to update our Keyport online borough website. But, again, with construction, zoning, all this stuff, we're kind of moving it progressively into full capacity. And we would still be doing remote sessions of zoning and things like that to ensure we are preventing close engagement with any residents or businesses that need to open. Regarding 317 Beer Street, thank you, Councilman Good, for stating that. That's exactly where we are right now at this point. The fencing, it seems more of a impeachment into neighboring area. It's not so much a planning board or anything. It was pretty much cleared, and we will, that's outside of our realm right now. But again, that was not part of the planning board. And again, it's owned by a retail Nissan dealership that probably needs to confer with the owner and talk about why is there fencing in their property line. So again, that's where we are with that state. So again, there's nothing at this point the borough can do with that property. But again, we'll still investigate any further to see what we can do. Regarding KBBC, some good news. Our farmers market will start in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks from now, Thursday, June 2nd. So it's going to be a soft launch, and there will be social distancing where they will actually pick the vegetables for you and all of that. So that's actually very positive, and it will be at Fireman's Lot where historically it's always been. So we're looking forward to having that opportunity for our Keyport residents to buy organic or nice vegetables and whatever else. And again, as opportunities arise, that with everything that changes, at this point, it's just going to be a farmer's market with food. But as opportunities allow to have vendors come in, I know last year we had some honey vendors and some other stuff. As these allowances change, well, I extend opportunities to other businesses to come in the farmers market, as we have done in the past, as part of KBBC. Yes, I think that's it for me now.
Thank you. Councilwoman Pacheco?
Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry. One more thing I just want to say. I want to thank Mr. Moon, because he did send me the ordinance regarding the rec committee, the resolution on the skateboarding park, and with the feedback from the rec committee, we will pull everything outside of skateboarding has been pulled out of the agreement. And at this point today, and Mr. Moon, you can maybe add more details on this if you want to clarify.
Sure.
The JIF approved our recommendations to have it only skateboarding. So that's good news. So that's always been it. But at this point, the park cannot be opened because of COVID-19. We cannot get we have to go through a JIF insurance, kind of make sure that it's cleared and ready to go. So even if the construction is completed, we actually are at a standstill probably to June, give or take the end of June, mid-June, before we get any insurance allowance to have visitors go in there. Sorry, thank you.
If I could just clarify that the park is no problem. Sorry, 1 second. If I just want to clarify for anyone on the call or listening later, the park is not closed due to COVID-19. There was a delay in having state inspections because of COVID-19, and we had not even finished our construction yet at the start of COVID-19. So now that all these state inspections have been stopped for the last 2 months, I don't even know where we'll be on the waiting list to get that state inspection. And without the state inspection, we cannot get the insurance through the JIF. So I just want everyone to understand that is why that is still considered an active construction site. In addition to the Borough Council still having to adopt the resolution. So I just want to clarify that.
And that also includes
Councilwoman.
I just want to say one, that also includes the field as well, because that whole area was.
The entire area, the whole Main Street Park is considered an active construction site.
Thank you. I just want to make sure all people understood that's not just.
Thank you. Hold on a second. Let me get it up. So for police, they had 985 calls for service. Can you hear me? Because I can't see I can't see my screen right now. I'm reading. 985 calls of service. 29
Yes.
of those
Yes.
are
Yes.
case files. Okay, great. Thank you. As you're aware, the police department, in conjunction with OEM, opened the boat ramp and part of Fireman's Lot approximately 2 weeks ago, and will begin phase 2 on opening part of the main waterfront parking lot. They purposely delayed these openings and waited for other towns to open theirs first to prevent a mass gathering of people. We believe now that is the time to go a bit further on the soft openings. Keep in mind that both the police department and OEM will monitor this closely and can adjust accordingly for the safety of our residents. The chief also wanted me to talk briefly about the update to Assembly Bill number 3966 that states that bars may now sell mixed or blended alcohol in any closed container. So the bill allows the holder of certain retail consumption licenses or permits, liquor licenses that are generally issued to bars, to sell and deliver alcoholic beverages in original containers or any closed or sealed containers for consumption. Limited brewery licenses and other kinds of like winery licenses that we don't have any of that in town. They're also permitted to sell and deliver their products in original package or any closed or sealed container for consumption during the state of emergency. Under the bill, sorry, my computer just freaked out a little bit. Sorry. Under the bill, the permit, a craft distillery license can also sell mixed or blended with other alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverages, so margaritas, sangria. That's all permitted now. So that's, and I also just want to thank the police department. I think they're doing an amazing job right now. And, you know, just thank you. And I hope that they all stay safe. Same thing for our fire and our first aid. The Green Team, it's funny, I was going to report Councilman Fotopoulos. The Green Team actually met to discuss moving forward with their Sustainable Jersey certification. They're currently certified as bronze, and they actually have enough renewable points to keep the certification. So the new goal is to actually be certified as silver. Then I'm going to get my harbor report up. I'm used to having my notebook in front of me. I apologize. So the Harbor Commission met. We also talked about parking and the opening of the boat ramp. We had discussions about the CDC and how the CDC regulations will need to be followed. They're going to be putting up a poster up at the boat ramp. We actually also spoke about like the license agreements and a plan for the charter boats to return. We did speak about this before the most recent executive order. So that conversation's slightly outdated at this point. We talked about putting a sign at the outfall pipe instead of a beacon. So it'll be a sign instead of the beacon, that orange triangle that means, well, it's probably not danger, but means warning. We also spoke about updating the bicycle ordinance, and we will be talking more about the harbor master plan and new business. And as regarding the floodgates, and maybe I'll refer more to I think I saw Nicole, you were on the line. Those are really just a nicer way to close the road when the road floods. We're working in conjunction with the police department to make sure that those are placed appropriately and in the best spot. So I'll have more of an update on that once we get closer to that. And I think that's it. So thank you again. And hold on, I'm going to go back on camera. Thank you. I hope I didn't look crazy. I didn't see myself on the camera when I was talking. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President Sheridan.
We had some good news. Tropical Storm Arthur, North Carolina, is headed out to sea.
Councilman, we can't hear you. Councilman, we can't hear you.
Okay, Tropical Storm
Much
Arthur
better.
went out to sea. They missed North Carolina, so we're still going to have a local emergency planning committee meeting. Thanks to the helpful gov by the mayor. We're going to have it the first or second week of June. I'm still working out with Mr. Crowley. And we'll talk about Keyport's ability to respond to emergency, because it looks like we're now entering hurricane season. The Veterans Initiative and Senior Bus Committee skipped their main meeting. Historical Society is chomping at the bit to open. The Finance Committee is looking to have the next meeting June 16th for our discussion on the budget. And to respond to Mr. Lane's comment, his question, the tax rate for 2020 is 0.8764. That's up from 0.8522 in 2019. That's an increase of 0.0242. What that means is on a $282,802 average residential property, the increase is going to be about $68.39. All these numbers are in the budget that's online right now. And Mr. Fallon has been doing this since the beginning of time, and he'll be able to better answer questions. But that's the direct answer to Mr. Lane's question. And I want to reiterate what my peers have said. Emergency services and police, everybody's doing a fantastic job. I've been walking the town a lot, and everybody is keeping the town clean. Everybody seems to be social distancing really well. And I'm just really impressed with Keyport at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, just a point of personal order. I actually need to, I need to go get my computer charger, so I'm going to step away. I thought that might have been needed to be noted for the record. I'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you.
Move on to the mayor's report. I'd like to give a thank you to the many employees and volunteers who have been consistently willing to rise to the occasion to help and work together to help the borough of Keyport during this unprecedented time. Thank you, Chief Hafner, Chief Crowley, and Tom Henshaw for being part of the 4-Corps team from February, as well as Captain Torres, who has helped tirelessly interpret and help implement over 50 new laws via executive orders, which were often announced in press conferences before we received the signed executive order. Thank you to the following leaders who have sat on many conference calls to report what would be needed in their departments to make everything function in the best and safest way possible, including submitting closure plans to work virtually from home, as well as submitting reopen plans to the borough administrator and identifying all the needs that their department would need. Thank you, Bob Kutchman, for continuously getting new signs from the printer and installing them, for working with Monmouth County on the barrels, for the lot closures, for moving the benches, the swings, taping off the playgrounds, and everything else that was tossed at DPW in the last couple months. Thank you, Dr. Savoya, for your continuous communication and collaboration and sitting on the conference calls as well, and identifying how any school children may need assistance and working with the police department on that as well, and working to make sure that all of the children that receive free and reduced lunch continue to do so since the last day the school closed back in March. I know you work collaboratively with the Rain Foundation to make that happen and are continuing to make that happen so all the children are fed, and that's appreciated. Thank you, Michelle Clark, for handling all of the special meeting announcements and emergency votes and minutes, as well as us having a virtual meeting via Zoom tonight. I know this was all new information, as well as your first official election day coming up and having to monitor all the new changes for that. Thank you to Library Director Janet Torsney for being here for just a few weeks and having to turn what we always called, or what Mr. Crew always refers to as, the best little library there is. I think you also get a gold star for being rated as the best virtual library there is, because you definitely kept social media and the website updated with plenty of things for people to still participate in the functions of the offerings of what our library has to offer to the public. So thank you for that. CFO Tom Fallon, thank you for being willing to create blanket purchase orders so that we could get signs made and flyers made on the fly to get over to the senior high-rise buildings when we needed to communicate with them in hard copy. As well as for all the tax updates and staying on top of the grant information. Thank you, Tony Vecchio, for working to establish on the early onset, before anyone else had even started implementing it, to be able to do virtual inspections and to get that up and running and implemented. Thank you, Chief Muscatello and Assistant Chief Basari, for being on the calls and identifying what needs were from the fire department, and offering when you first had the initial sanitation solution. And thank you for reaching out when there were almost too many requests for birthday parade drive-bys on another way that we could offer something if you weren't able to find a volunteer to go out that day, and coming up together with the idea of the birthday video. Thank you, Mark Moon, for the resolutions and vote by mails and assisting with getting Zoom accounts set up. Donna Purcell, thank you for handling all the Board of Health updates, as well as communicating with funeral homes and processing the death certificates. I know this has not been an easy time to have to even read what may have been written on some of them. Thank you, Madeline Costello, for providing, even though the senior center has been closed, for providing all of the senior check-in calls and staying in constant communication with our senior citizens. and most recently, the social media pages and Zoom accounts so they can see each other virtually. Tom Gallo, thank you for being on the calls for Clean Communities and making sure everything was monitored for litter and cleanliness throughout the borough. I know there was a lot of face masks being picked up in the parking lot. George Falco and Lori Graham, thank you for getting SDL finally up and running completely. We've had that in the borough for a year, and you guys had to get that up and running in 2 weeks. So kudos to you guys. We didn't have any of the tablets that we needed, and you guys got them in and got them implemented so people could do all of their stuff virtually. Carrie Stencil, thank you for working and getting all the notices and letters out regarding the water bills, water shutoff, postponements, and tax information. Thank you, Jim Lawson, for picking up all the items from Freehold every time OEM called, either you or Chief Crowley, to go pick stuff up. Andrew Rossman, thank you for being dedicated and willing to be able to act on behalf of OEM and CERT continuously on every call. Thank you, Jen Mendez, for working with the state on being able to set up our court virtually. Thank you, Council President Sheridan, for working on and being on the calls in case anything needed to be relayed back to anyone. And thank you, Denise, for always being willing to monitor Facebook even without being asked, so that on your off hours, I wasn't reaching out to you, but you would keep an eye on the updates on the mayor page so that you could put them to the borough page since you're the only one that has access to that page. And thank you for getting all of the different things set up, like the Vonage account that wasn't finished being set up either, as well as all of the employees to be able to use a Vonage app at home, as well as this Zoom and working with Madeline and the Chime calls and setting up all the conference calls for the department heads every day, or not every day, but at least over a dozen of them. We've definitely been in communication a lot over the last couple of months with both building managers and the senior high rises to make sure all needs of the seniors in those buildings have been taken care of. Our senior center has been closed, but we still continue to run the interfaith hot meal delivery service out of the kitchen of the senior center. Overall, we still have to monitor within the guidelines of what executive orders are in place. So I know it's a hot topic about, I don't know that any of us have ever heard the words parking lots, benches, or gazebo so much in our life, but I trust us that those are still existing executive orders, and the first implementation of guidance for park related items was up to each municipality. However, when the executive order for opening of state parks was issued, there was guidance in that executive order that now put restrictions on the municipal parks as well. And those include not allowing anyone to have picnics or stay at picnic tables, sit on benches, or any type of permanent structure such as a gazebo. And it also mandates a 50% parking reduction. And overall, all the other things such as playgrounds and so forth, that is still by executive order, and in consultation with our insurance representative, they advise against doing anything that does not follow current executive orders for insurance purposes reasons. So I hope that explains why the playgrounds are still closed and the benches and the gazebo and the playgrounds and part of the parking lot. So early on, the council had wanted, last council meeting, the council wanted to be part of the reopening plan of the parking lot. And it was decided that instead of closing off each parking lot at 50%, the large capacity, they would just do it in one large capacity area, which was the larger lot on American Legion Drive. But I do believe now that the charter fishing boat is going to be able to sail, I do believe Captain Torres and Chief Hafner and Chief Crowley and the borough administrator came up with a plan on how what they're going to reopen for the American Legion lot. And with that said, with all of that, we also sent out 33 update summaries to all department heads and all council members throughout this time frame. So it's definitely been active and busy, that's for sure. No one's sitting idle. Everyone is pretty busy. So thank you for everyone's patience throughout this pandemic. And now we will go on to the, I apologize. There is one new piece of business that came in today. In addition to sitting on calls with the governor's office weekly and the freeholder's office several times, and Congressman Pallone and Menendez and Booker, one good announcement is that Monmouth County was one of 9 counties to receive funding from the CARES Act. They held a conference call this week to explain how they're going to distribute those funds. The conference call was yesterday. The guidelines came in today, I think at 4:54. So Tom wanted to report on that. Hold on one second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. We have to do a resolution tonight because we have to turn in our first series of payment of receipts to the county by June 14th. And the resolution we need is a resolution from council to agree in total to the Monmouth County Municipal Coronavirus Relief Fund Program Reimbursement Agreement. So I need a motion and a second.
Wait, what?
We need a resolution tonight. This came at the last minute, so we didn't have time to incorporate it into the agenda. So I brought it up now. It's a resolution from council to agree in total to the Monmouth County Municipal Coronavirus Relief Fund Program Reimbursement Agreement.
What are we agreeing to? I mean, other than getting reimbursed?
So basically they have, it's almost like a shared servicing type of, I didn't read through, as I said, it came in tonight. Tom, can you hit me? Because they're getting feedback, sorry. So it's basically we had said that Millennium would do through everything with the county, but it's actually just a simple application from what I'm understanding from Tom. So he needs guidance to say that we're okay to move forward with applying for reimbursement from the Monmouth County allocation of their $108 million check that they received from the federal government.
Are we agreeing to anything else other than just submitting, we submit and we get money back? Is that anything? I mean, is there any obligation other than submit the receipts?
No, we have to, no, Matt, we have to just apply to, with all the receipts that we have that we paid for. We can't send in receipts that haven't been paid for. So the first round will be the ones that we've already spent, so we can get some of that money back sometime in July. And all we have to do is follow, you know, the contract that they sent us. And I can get that to Mark Moon tomorrow to review, but it's really a normal contract.
Hi, this is Councilman
Would you rather us, because there's an attachment, right? Then it has the guidelines on it.
Yes.
Can we circulate that and then do a vote by mail?
Yeah.
Email tomorrow?
I think I agree. I'd like to be able to read it.
With Habitat.
Mr. Moon, can we do it that way?
Yeah. I'll get
Okay.
Michelle a notice. She's got to post a notice and saying that's what's going on.
Okay, guys, this would have obviously been to you. We were hoping to get it early this morning and we didn't. So that's why we couldn't get it out. But at least now you guys know that by tomorrow afternoon, please check your emails because you'll have to do a vote by mail.
Yeah.
But vote by email, I mean, okay?
Tom, just to quickly, really, is there anything surprising? You say it's a normal contract, but you say that to a lawyer. And Mark.
No, I know, Matt. No, it's just normal stuff that they want to put in there to protect both parties when it comes to reimbursement, and to let us know that, when they run out of money, whoever didn't get it at that time is not going to get anything. So, it's, let me tell you how many pages.
Mr. Moon, do we even need to have a resolution on this? Or can you and Mr. Henshaw review it?
I mean, look, if you want to just forward me, if you have it on email, just forward me the email. I'll take a look at it. Like I said, I have no idea what's in it, so it won't take me long. I can.
I'll send it to you as soon as I go back upstairs.
Yeah.
I'll send it to everybody. But it's really just a normal standard contract. There's nothing in there that can hurt either party, just that we agree to what happens when they give out the money. You'll see.
So this is Councilman McDermott. So will we need Millennium to still continue to work on any other opportunities, or?
They're going to be handling, my understanding is they're going to be handling the FEMA.
Okay, got it.
Right, Millennium is FEMA, right?
Good question.
Okay.
And just so everybody knows, we have to go through this process before we would apply to FEMA.
Thank you.
Okay. Tom, can you think? Okay, next we have our consent agenda. I know there was one question from the public, but I believe you answered that already, Council President Sheridan, on 16220. So any members of the council have any discussion on items on the consent agenda? You guys may have to all unmute yourself, the council.
Just as a question, a matter of policy or inquiry here, with regards to, I'm looking at some of the other fees that, like legal and administrative. Are we going to be able to apply some of those to the COVID-19 subheading to try and get those paid for?
Wait, are you talking about, what are you talking about? Are you talking about what Tom was talking about, or are you talking about something on the consent agenda?
I'm talking about the payment of bills.
Oh, perfect, sorry. I didn't hear which one you were talking about, I'm sorry.
I didn't say it. I apologize.
That's okay.
So,
Hey, Dennis.
Yeah.
Just so you know, anything that deals with the COVID-19, we've already made copy of in the finance department. So anything you see on there that you may feel is COVID-19, we've probably already made copies of that to present for our first round of payment reimbursement. But if you see something there, just let me know and I'll take a look at it.
Thank you, Tom. Both Diana and Tom Fallon have done a great job segmenting out the COVID-19 expenditures for hard goods, for sure, and in some cases services over the past 3 months. I can take it offline, but I'd like to, we could talk about the other fees, and I'll give you a call tomorrow about it.
That's fine.
There's still some fees that are coming in that we still have to probably adopt by resolution, because we're fees that we didn't agree to on the dais that we're just receiving now. So we're still reviewing that, like attorney fees and so forth. So that's all still, there's a lot still being reviewed. But I think the things that are going to be reimbursable at first are the hardcore things like the sanitation system, the PPE masks and stuff like that, as well as the for the workers to work from home, the VPN access and so forth.
Those are clearly marked, and I appreciate that.
And just to also clarify, just so you know, nothing can be, if anything ever existed in your budget to begin with, it's not reimbursable by either FEMA or by this plan by the county. And if it, you cannot do loss of revenue, and you cannot hire manpower, but you could pay for overtime if it was related to COVID.
Okay, so not hire manpower, does that include services? External services such as the,
No, you can't.
the legal team is doing a fine job, and we already approved the retainer. It's some of the administrative and some of the legal that have been inflated that I just want to get a handle on, and hopefully we can get paid for over the some of it paid for.
We haven't done a retainer for legal. That's what we're going to probably have to talk about at next meeting once we see the bills. We've only received one bill that we didn't even know we were going to be getting, so that has to be reviewed and then approved by council.
We haven't done retainer.
Sorry, Mayor, if we haven't received, we agreed to a certain fee at the beginning of the year with the council. Or are we talking about something different?
For regular council, but we received a different thing last week. So itemized of anything COVID related. So
okay. So if it was COVID,
that's what we're still looking at. That's not on your payment. That's not on your payment of bills.
So if it was COVID related, it's actually being marked as COVID related.
And a completely different bill with that.
Okay, good. I'll just.
And that's
I'll
what we're having reviewed because I'm not sure if that.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll follow
Right.
up
So that
with Tom
wedding
and
became
ask
very
for-
expensive.
What?
Is that bill going to be forwarded to the finance committee?
Yeah, I think Tom is waiting for some guidance and answers, and then he's going to give you guys everything.
Thank you.
Did you say something about a wedding?
I said yes. That wedding became very expensive.
Okay, so I'll just follow up with Tom tomorrow and get some detail from Diana. Right, Tom?
Make that Thursday, Dennis.
You got it. You got it. No problem. Thanks, bud.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? So if there are no further questions from council, if we can please have a motion. Did you want to read them, Michelle? Oh, no, we're good. If we could please have a motion to approve the resolutions 16120 to 16720.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Cooper,
Yes.
and Councilmember Fotopoulos,
Yes.
and Councilmember Good,
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott,
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco,
Yes.
and Councilmember Sheridan.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a public hearing adoption of ordinance 420 revising borough public bench sponsorship program.
This is an ordinance of the Borough of Keyport, County of Monmouth, New Jersey, revising the Borough of Keyport Public Bench Sponsorship Program.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to open to the public?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone from the public wish to speak on ordinance 4-20?
I think you have to unmute them.
Hello. There you go. Hey. Hello.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Who is that? Sorry, I was switching headsets. Mr. Graham?
You have
Yes,
Ed Baloo and you have
Elmer,
Okay, great, thank you. I was switching, the headset died, so go ahead. Mr. Graham?
Yes, Elmer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. Can you all explain this ordinance 4-20?
Yeah, Elmer, this is Victoria. There was an ordinance on the books for a bench program like this. It was a little complicated. One of the things in the former borough administrator's exit memo was to kind of simplify the process, and that's what this ordinance hopefully does. Mirror it off of other municipalities and have similar programs.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ed Berlew.
Mr. Baloo?
How you doing, Mayor? Council.
Good, how are you?
My first question, is the water plant back in full bloom or is it not?
I didn't hear you, sir.
Right now, we're in a public session hold on, Mr. Baloo, can you hold that for maybe just a couple more minutes? Because right now we're in a public hearing for an ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak on ordinance number 420 adoption? Going once, going twice. Okay, can I have a motion to close to the public?
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to adopt ordinance 4-20 revising borough public bench sponsorship program?
Second.
Did you get that? Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Cooper,
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos,
Yes.
Councilmember Good,
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott,
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco,
Yes.
and Councilmember Sheridan.
Yes.
Can I have a motion authorizing the clerk to publish the ordinance as adopted, please?
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstain or nay? Next, we'll go to communications by consent. We have one for approval and items 2 through 6 to receive and file. Does anyone have any questions from the council on those items?
Can we open for discussion the letter from the Green Team, please, Mayor?
On the dais, sure. Not to, okay, you guys could discuss
That's
it.
what I meant.
I mean, I'm not sure what part you want to talk about because, you know, I've never seen a copy of the minutes to know who's been attending or not attending. And as far as the vacancies from the other volunteer organizations, they're shorthanded themselves already. And then the other one we can't discuss because that's a personal thing.
Right.
But other than that, we can discuss it.
So the obvious, if you know, and I'm gonna defer to Councilwoman Pacheco too. But the Green Team has performed some obvious benefit to the borough with regards to the bronze rating that they've achieved year after year. It's not a minimal amount of work. It's a little bit of work that few people do. And I spent 6 years on the Green Team myself as a member of the Planning Board and the Environmental Commission and a liaison, and it's always been this way. So while they don't have minutes, you can take my word for it and probably other members' words for it that, you know, it's always been a thin organization of a few people that do all the work. They're pretty dedicated too. There's only been one person that I recall that has sort of done a whole bunch of work and then had to leave because he has a lot more to do, and that was Ed Carew. And we all know how much Ed does. Perhaps in this discussion or in a future discussion regarding the membership, I think this is a plea from not just the chair, but from the committee themselves to ask for more participation. And maybe rather than address the issue of ensuring that somebody from the organizations that are mentioned in his letter be assigned or appointed, maybe what we need to do is get on a path to saying yes to JP and finding a way to get more people who might be interested becoming a part of the green team.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And yes, I'd be glad to defer to Councilwoman Pacheco on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently on the green team. I was also on the green team early in my council tenure, and it's the same kind of group of 5, and they do a lot of work. And I also want to point out that I think the reason why some of those particular organizations and departments were mentioned is because the idea now is to try to certify for silver status, and some of the things that we might need to do that would, the conversations that people from those departments and those organizations would bring would be very helpful to the group. And frankly, yeah, it's a very sparse group. I can certainly at the next meeting try to get a real attendance list if that's what you'd like. But I think that it's important to get a little bit more, some new blood in there. I think that they'd like that. And again, I want to reiterate that I think some of the projects that they'll need to do going forward in order to get the silver status might benefit from the input of people from those groups and committees.
Thanks, Councilwoman.
Okay, so those vacancies that have been on there for probably 5 years now. So I was just wondering, did you guys ever discuss maybe changing the ordinance or the guidelines to see if maybe it could be different volunteers as opposed to the other volunteer organizations that we appoint that are also shorthanded and the same 5 people doing them, like recreation and so forth, who are also already tapped out? Is there any possibility of changing the criteria and changing the whole format so you can get what you're looking for?
That's what I was suggesting tonight. Sorry, Councilwoman.
No,
yeah, that's what I was suggesting, is that we get on a path, basically get on a path to yes, and the way to do that is to expand the list. My suggestion, Councilwoman Pacheco, what do you think that adding more citizen members rather than organizational representatives to fill out the ranks would be beneficial? And
yeah,
even adding a member of council. I mean, I don't think, you know, we do have a lot on our plates too, but you know, another member of council making it 2 wouldn't hurt. But certainly adding a number of members of the community who may want to be, say, a member of the Environmental Commission, but have not been appointed to the Environmental Commission, maybe we can appoint them to the Green Team.
Yeah, I can certainly bring this discussion back to the green team. I don't see the harm in that, and I agree. I think that it's in part a need for some fresh blood and some more volunteers. And you know, going forward, we have a real chance to get a silver certification that is incredibly hard to do, though Red Bank has done it recently. And I think that the more help, the better. And however we can get there, I think we should explore the way to do that.
And just so we understand what a silver certification gives us, it gives the borough recognition for sure, but it also provides for greater opportunities for grants. You know, grant applications are looked more favorably upon when a commitment like a silver certification is established.
And JP actually worked really hard also with the team to get it ranked at all, to even get Sustainable New Jersey at the rating we have. So he, you know, worked simultaneously with the Environmental Commission back in the beginning. So, you know, to want to even further that is a great goal. But as you know, the Councilwoman Pacheco is the liaison. She can bring whatever proposal she would like to the dais, and we could definitely circulate that process.
Yeah, JP's commitment can't be understated.
No,
no, I agree.
Can't be overstated.
Yeah, for years.
Can't be overstated.
No, right, absolutely. No, he's definitely worked hard for years. Okay, so we'll look forward to hearing back from you, Councilwoman Pacheco, on what updates you would like to provide, or if you want to change the guidelines for that.
Absolutely.
Any other items on the communication want to be discussed by council members? Can I please have an approval to receipt and file communication? Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Cooper. Councilmember Cooper.
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes.
Councilmember Sheridan.
Yes.
Thank you. We have approval of minutes from the May 5th regular council meeting. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I don't know that everyone was everyone present for that meeting, Michelle?
Cooper
No,
has to.
right?
That's been Cooper.
Cooper
I
has
was
it, right.
there, but I didn't,
But-
you couldn't
right,
hear
the
me.
mute wasn't working, right. So, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any abstain? I guess Councilman Cooper, right, because we couldn't hear his votes. And any no? Okay. Thank you. Next, we have reports of department. Do you want to read them for the record, please, Michelle?
The reports of departments are report number 1 is the municipal clerk's report for April 2020. Report number 2 is the tax water sewer collector's report for April 2020. Report number 3 is the Board of Health Treasurer's report for April 2020. Report number 4 is the building department monthly report for April 2020. And report number 5 is the municipal court monthly report for April 2020.
Motion to
I
receive.
please have a motion to approve. Oh, go ahead,
Just a motion to,
Councilman Sheridan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any no's? Okay, thank you. Next, we have under new business library construction bonds.
if that's finance, we were gonna talk about that. That has, from what I've heard, that has minimal impact in the year 2020. And it's necessary to complete or to go with the grant that we're getting. I believe the library is set with what they want and they've prioritized it. And Tom Henshaw, am I coming close on this? Are we, is this what we're talking about in this? You just need a direction from council on which way to go with this?
I think what happened is when we went, when Millennium went for it, there wasn't enough information to get it in on time. So I think you're going to push it off until the next series comes around that we can apply for it. But I will go back to Millennium and make sure that's what they said the other, last time we talked.
Okay.
Yeah, please just let us all know too, because I know that there was certain projects in the MPP that we were helping the library out with, and I don't know how intertwined they are, but it would help to know the status. I think it would just help to know the status of the grant.
Okay, I most certainly will.
Thank you.
And just for everyone's record, and even with COVID-19, the original bond due date was not extended out. For that reason, if this is where it's falling, that's for the reason that we couldn't meet the initial bond due date.
Any further discussion on that?
On the COVID-19, is that the one we're on now?
We're going on to Council Committee COVID-19 and State of Emergency and Operating Procedures that a council member had requested to be put on.
I'd like to recluse myself from that. I think I'm tied up with too many things that has to do with COVID-19, and I couldn't give proper time to this. Plus the fact between the food pantry, the Council on Aging, and fulfill the food bank of Monmouth and Ocean County. We're tied up all over the place, and I don't think I should be on that.
Thank you. I'm not even sure what the guidelines of this committee would have to be, and it would have to be formed and established, and anything that went through the committee would then have to come back to the full council for any votes. So I defer to Councilman Good on whether he has that criteria ready.
Point of order, Mayor. What did we decide with the library? I'm sorry, I must have missed it. The library construction bond? New business?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm going to call Millennium tomorrow and just make sure what they said as far as not applying for a first round, but applying for the second round based on the information they didn't have with this time frame.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Tom.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Good?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, right before I get to that, can I ask what happened to the draft resolution of support you passed around, I believe it was last night, about the Senate and the Assembly, which was, you said it was time sensitive if we wanted to get it on?
Oh, yeah, I'll defer to, you had said that you wanted it on, so.
No, I know. Where is it?
I don't know.
That's my question. I thought you said, do you think that's important about the spending? I think it was bonds. Yes.
Right. Tom Fallon said no. So, and then I think you said yes, and then I think Mark circulated something, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the final decision was between you and Council President as the finance chair, what we were doing with that. I know I saw two emails. The CFO said no, and then you said yes, but I don't know what else you guys hashed out for the rest of that.
Well, okay, so why it's not listed under the agenda for even discussion?
I left that to you guys. I put it out to you guys if you wanted it on.
Right, and I said let's put it on. So
I didn't not put it on.
I'm not accusing you of anything, Mayor. I'm just asking what happened. If it was an oversight, it was an oversight. But
Mark, did you circulate that to anybody else, or Joe as the finance chair? I mean, I saw one no and one yes. So I mean, I don't know where you guys left off with that. So
If I could just get this is Victoria, a quick clarification. What resolution?
So there is two pieces of legislation that's pending in the state legislature and legislative bodies, the Assembly and the Senate, which would authorize municipalities to be able to issue what's called coronavirus relief bonds. And there was a request for sort of resolutions from municipalities urging sort of the formal adoption of this pending legislation. There was some comment from the CFO that Keyport in particular would not necessarily be in need of, wasn't in a position where they're going to need to do that. So he sort of recommended against it. But there was a draft circulated regardless. Ultimately what it is it authorizes, it basically has the borough supporting the ability for municipalities to issue these bonds related for costs related to coronavirus.
That's
Was
how
this circulated amongst the top two chairs of the finance committee only?
Well, it was the mayor.
I never received it.
Yeah, I have not.
Yeah, I never did. Okay, all right. So it was just Joe and Matt and the mayor, correct?
It came from the League of Municipalities, and it was basically like everything else that I keep circulating out, depending on what committee it would fall under, is, hey, do you guys want to stay on, do this? Do you not want to do this? And this came in late yesterday. Some mayors are signing. It's kind of like the NESE, right? Like, do you want to do a resolution on it? So I deferred it to our CFO and finance chair and Matt and Tom Henshaw, and said, is this something you guys are interested in? So, and then I kind of just let it to them. So.
Okay.
It's necessary for Keyport, but Matt Good brought up a good idea that maybe we should support it for other towns. And in the light of that, I don't have an issue with it. Mark?
So how about, since we have to do another resolution tomorrow, vote by email, can we just do them both on that?
I'll do that.
Please circulate it, because I would like to read it. Thank you.
That's what I mean. So if we do it by vote by email with the other one, then you guys can read it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Good, does that answer your question on that?
Oh, yes, Your Honor. Mayor, thank you. With regard to, and again, I'm actually, I'm happy, Mr. Fallon said that our revenues, the tax bill payments actually came in without the delay that we approved. So it's great that Keyport doesn't have a cash flow problem, but I expect that there are other municipalities around the state that don't have well, their issues, and that they're really needing funding. So that's I'm glad the Keyport won't need it, but also I support our sister municipalities. So I appreciate that. With regard to the new business committee, I was reading the news, and it appears that this COVID state of emergency, they're expecting it to, I don't know, I guess flare up again, be it the end of this year, beginning of next year. And I thought that it would be appropriate if the council was started thinking about a committee, some of the members to go over at least this, what is it, monitoring the borough's response. What have we done? What have we done right? What have we done wrong, if anything? And maybe construct some procedures that we may follow. Hopefully we'll never need to use it, but better be prepared than anything else. I like when Councilman Sheridan has his emergency kind of walkthroughs, and I know that we went over the what happens if a hurricane hits, those kind of exercises. I think something along those lines would be appropriate. This isn't a every water crashing around, but this is an issue that has really thrown everybody for a loop. So I think that at the end of the day, we can all learn something from it. And while I commend the mayor for her work, as she's done an amazing job of this, if this comes around again, we might not have the mayor in office. And, you know, there might be some other either council members or another mayor that would appreciate having a guidelines or some kind of procedure to follow. So again, I'm not proposing any names right now. I'm just I'm throwing it out there for a discussion that we might want to think about doing this. It's really, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that there's any harm in reviewing what's happened in the past 7 or 8 weeks and putting pen to paper and creating guidelines to move forward. I think that's important. I think that the only way to move on and to react, for lack of a better word, for God forbid another flare up, is to be able to say, this is what worked, this is what didn't, this is how we'll do this time, this is what we learned. this is what we learned worked, and obviously keep it flexible enough to be able to maneuver. But I don't see any harm with putting pen to paper.
No, I don't see any harm with that either, but I'm just wondering, is that just going to be an appendix to the already existing plans that have to get submitted yearly to the Monmouth County OEM by our OEM coordinators every year and to the LEPC committee? So are you just talking about adding an appendage to that, Councilman Good? Or, I mean, a reference to your other emails that came out a couple weeks ago that you're saying that every single decision on reopening phase and COVID related has to come through the full council. So since we don't have another council meeting for a month, I just want to clarify what it is that you're asking for.
Mayor, please don't distort my what I said. As a council member, and this is a borough form of government, we have a obligation to all of the citizens to make sure that both we are informed as well as contribute and participate in the decisions that are being made. Emergencies do arise, and in that situation, governments do have to be able to react. But at the end of the day, also, this is a strong council system, and I think that it's incumbent upon all of the council members to chime in, give their points of what they also believe would be the appropriate actions. Like the discussion we had last meeting about opening up the parking lot, there were some council members, myself, who said that I think that we should keep the parking lots closed. The other discussions, which seemed to win the day, were that we should open up Fireman's Park. So I don't think that it's inappropriate to request and insist that the council be active participants in the decisions that are being made by the town. So please don't distort what I'm saying. I'm not stating that we have to make every single decision, and I take umbrage with your insinuation of that.
I believe your email indicated that every decision had to be vetted through you guys and notified immediately thereafter. So I wasn't sure.
No, I said that the decisions that were made should be reported to the council.
Which they were.
Then there's no issue.
And then, right, and as you pointed out, it is a strong form of government and a borough form of government. And as far as any communication that I had with the people that the council members have approved to hire as far as borough heads, that would be who was implementing the decisions, and we were just streamlining as far as taking communications so that everyone had what they needed in place to make things happen, to keep our borough safe and protected. It's not like I was sitting here mandating with a gavel telling people what they needed to do. But I also can let you know that in that form of government, the mayor is the person that has to make sure that all laws are adhered to, as you're aware. So since laws were changing every day, we did have to communicate frequently. And then as we received those updates, I personally sat on those conference calls and by hand took all the minutes and then typed them up to you guys, so that you were in the loop on any decisions that were being made. And if it was something that was going out to the public and then we could do it in a timely manner, each area was called respectively. So when it was about the senior center, Councilman Cooper was called and contacted first. When it was about recreation, the recreation person was called and contacted, as well as the recreation chair, as well as any other areas that needed to be consulted first. And a lot of these decisions were vetted with, all the decisions were vetted with the OEM coordinator and the police chief, and often the captain of the police department, as well as the borough administrator. So each liaison has a department they're in charge of. If they had any questions, they certainly could have called any of those 4 people or any of the other people I identified on the conference calls, since those are their liaison department heads. So, I'm just...
I'm not saying that you didn't do anything. All I'm saying is that that questions, while there are liaisons, this is also a full council. The liaison is from the departments to the council. So to an extent, to any extent that there are, that the liaisons know, are you saying that it's the liaison's responsibility to inform the council of what's going on? Or these
Well, I
decisions?
can certainly tell you that I'm pretty much the only mayor in probably all of Monmouth County that was sending out update emails at all. So, and I have checked with many of them. So no, I don't know. And I checked with borough form of governments just to make sure. No, none of them were sending out update emails.
Mayor,
Wait, what was that? I don't understand what that statement was. Say that again. Who wasn't sending out emails to who?
None of,
He was
none of the other
asking if
mayors
the,
sent updates, I think is
Correct.
the point. And
right, so
again,
you were asking where would anyone get their updates from? But their department heads, I guess.
well, no, you
that
said
they're the
that
liaison to.
you said that you informed the liaisons to the certain departments, and then if there were questions or anything like that, my question is, once the liaisons to the departments were at least relayed that information, what about the rest of the council that's not on those committees? That's my point. That things come up that not only issue of the local and the specific committee, but at the end of the day, this entire council has an obligation to review and chime in when necessary. So it would be it would be a abandonment of each of our elected positions to say, you know what, we're not even going to review anything else that's going on. That's my point. So when it came down to the question of should the parking lots be opened, I thought that that was a discussion for the entire council. After closing it, there's no emergency to reopen it. It's a discussion for the entire council.
And that's what I'm asking without having another meeting for another month. How do you want to proceed with that? Because there's going to be a lot of reopening phases, as we've seen in the last week from the governor, that a lot of these things, it's not a matter of us, it's a matter of what the governor's implementing. Just like I said, the 50% parking, we cannot lift that from the municipality at this point in time. Do I know if that's going to be all summer? I have no idea.
Well, when that question comes up is, can we lift it? I guess the question would be send it around and we can call a email vote. We seem to be doing that, or call some kind of meeting along those lines. It seems that working. My point is that this council is also part of the governing body, and that
we are the governing body.
We are the governing, yeah. Right.
Along with the mayor is the governing body. So my point is still that, decisions that are being made on behalf of the borough also should include the rest of the council members when necessary.
I guess I'm just a little confused. I'm just trying to get clarification so that all the department heads and the administrator and the police chief and the OEM coordinator and the captain of the police department know, are you saying that they need to come to the full council for decisions on what they do on a daily basis during COVID? That is what I'm trying to clarify of what it is that you want.
Mayor, obviously you're I don't know if you're.
No, I want to make sure how we're moving forward, because there's going to be a lot of things, like the library has a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 on how they want to reopen when they're allowed to. Do you want that plan? That's what I'm asking.
I think
when the recycling center, so when Dennis and the recycling coordinators want to reopen the recycling center, that has to come to full council. Is that what you're asking for? And I'm not being mean. I'm trying to clarify what it is that you're asking for.
I think that the plans going forward, if they are to reopen the recycling center or anything like that, at least the council should be notified so that if anybody has an objection to it that doesn't happen to be illegal, they can put that on the record, and that maybe there are other council members that would say, you know what, I disagree with that. Maybe we should stick with phase 1 instead of moving on to phase 2. So to the extent of these policy decisions that are being made, this council has an obligation to learn what it is and act accordingly. And the other point is that that's the administrator really is going to be the funneling person to that. He is for lack of a better term, administrator. He's supposed to be administering the bureaucracy of people. So when we're talking about funneling this up through, yeah, I think that the administrator is going to be responsible for seeing the department heads, and then the administrator is supposed to be distributing this information to the rest of the council so that we can determine whether or not we like or dislike the way things are going. So yes, I think that the fact that the administrator should be having department heads report to him, and he should be saying, you know what, this is the way we should go. And if any of these questions about policy need to be addressed by the council, they should be addressed by the council. Or even if there's any question, that also should be given out to the council. So maybe we need to bring more meetings, and we shouldn't have canceled the meetings, and we should reschedule another June, July, and August meeting. I think that that's a part that also comes up. But I chimed in last meeting on that. I said that we can be flexible. So when it comes up, so yeah, if we need to be flexible, then I, for one, would be willing to jump on another Zoom meeting. It doesn't seem to be that difficult, but yeah, it's incumbent upon us as council members to be informed and to speak up and say, you know what, this is what I think should be done. So that's my 2 cents on it. It really doesn't wrap into the whole committee and the council COVID committee, because I still think that at the end of the day, we should review everything. And as I said, you've done an amazing job with an amazing amount of work, but the next time that this strikes up, somebody might not have your ability to just pick up and do as much work, and they might be looking for some crutch to lean on. So I think that that would be a good idea for future generations of key porters. Now, whether or not that's appended to the LEPC or the OEM, again, haven't determined anything, just throwing it out there for a council discussion.
Thank you.
Matt, who do you see on this committee?
You know what, I again, didn't think past the maybe we should throw it out there. It really was just setting up to see a council. Maybe the public, tell you the truth, I didn't think more other than a council committee. We have committees. Sometimes we have too many committees, but
Right. But the way the mayor, she put together a large number of department heads, and almost for a while there, it was on a daily basis, asking them, what do they see, what's going on, whether they need masks, whether they need gloves, everything. Now that we're rolling out of it, maybe we do need this other committee to work with the businesses, even though she's been working with the businesses extremely. But I'm just trying to cater this committee to maybe something that's already existing that could just handle, because I like your idea. You know how we came up with like the ad hoc hurricane planning committee based on how we did.
Guys.
Something like this with the COVID-19, or just attach that on the LEPC or something like that. But it's more than that, because dealing with those people, it's more the emergency response, and we're losing that touch, that business touch that we would get from including more KBBC members or something like that, or business owners. It's just, it's an interesting concept you bring up, but I need more.
This is Councilman. I want to clarify, we're not done with COVID-19, first of all. We're still in the middle of it. It's still going to continue.
All right, hold on. Calm down, Councilwoman McDermott.
I know.
Take a breath.
I just said right now, I understand the concept.
Okay. Councilman Good expressed that it's about moving forward because we're not done with it yet. So hold on, take a deep breath.
But what I'm saying is that we also need to also engage those that were actually doing it. So we had, throughout my engagement, department heads did their job amazingly. They communicated with me as a liaison. It worked. There were decisions that need to be made. There were promptu decisions by the 4 core, I guess, COVID-19 committee, if you want to call it something, which is literally And those decisions had to be made quickly. I mean, this is like life and like, this is life decisions that, and also we also rely on the governor and like state and federal ordinances that, laws that we have to rely on. So a lot of these things are out of our hands, and we still have to progressively look at see this, for the next few months. So I think what I'm saying, I look at the end, if it's going to engage the 4 core and others, then maybe.
I also, just to put in my 2 cents, there were these conference calls with department heads, and it might going forward be useful to loop in that liaison for, if you're having a conversation on a department head, and I feel as if we just need to, as a council, be more informed as to what these decisions are being had. I think that the conversation about the parking lots was a great example of that. You had 6 people brainstorming about how the way to do something would be. And I think that that's important. And I also think it's important, for these conference calls, we do have liaisons. We have a liaison to the fire. We have a liaison to the police. Perhaps those people should be invited to the conference calls as well. That's just my thoughts on this.
So some conference calls had 27 people on them, which would include all of the respective departments. So you can't all be on the call. That was the problem, which is why we opened it up to the council president being on only, because how could we do it? Because every department head was invited to the call. So how would I choose any of all of you? I can't do that by quorum standards, because decisions were being made according to the laws that we were being given by the governor. So it wasn't a matter of that. And as far as making decisions, I wasn't making the decisions. I was just collectively putting them onto a conference call, because we had an interim borough administrator that was here for 6 weeks when this all started. And he didn't know all the moving pieces, like that there was a kitchen that provides Meals on Wheels weekly and daily out of our senior center, or all the moving pieces and whether he would even still be here. Right. So we started these conference calls so that we would have Purell in place for court, not knowing how bad this was all going to get down the pike. But it wasn't to exclude anybody. These were the department heads making the decisions on what they needed to continue the operations of the borough. That's who we have all collectively as a governing body hired to represent our borough as full-time employees.
I mean, maybe the answer would have been we split up to then not have one omnibus conference call. Maybe you could split it up into certain departments. Maybe you have 2 conference calls. Maybe it goes, same amount of time because you're dealing with the same amount of departments. I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer, but because who knows what happens. Something might work well today and not work well tomorrow. But at the end of the day, I still think that, there could be questions could be answered. There could be adjustments to be made. Not saying that anything was right, not saying anything was wrong, just saying that there's a discussion that possibly could be made.
Right, and I think that it's a matter of introspection and self-review and self-criticism that none of it is perfect, right? But how can we do it better next time? That's one of the things that I'm asking, even of myself. I'm my own worst critic. So how could I have gotten the information the way I wanted to get it next time? How can I do that? How can I do that so I can be of better service to the community? That's why I'm doing this. That's the only reason why I'm doing this, is because I want to help and I want to be
right, which is why why we put up all the announcements and I asked repeatedly for announcements to be shared and everything else. And when I did ask for help, there was constant pushback. So I do think a committee is good, but I'm just asking if there's guidelines for that committee.
Can I make a point, Mayor?
I'm not done.
For the past 8 weeks.
Can I make a point?
Sure, Councilman Cooper.
During the last 3-4 weeks, I've been getting calls. We have been getting calls from all over the state, federal government, etc. Which pantry's open, which isn't, all the other useful and unuseful paranoia. And matter of fact, we are getting calls from as far as Newark all the way down to here. People were in a panic mode, and we're getting averaging 30 to 40 calls a day, and we're getting all sorts of other information. I'm not complaining about anything, of course, as long as we have the food and wherewithal to furnish, we're more than happy to furnish it. But the bottom line is there are so many people with all sorts of good ideas, but they don't have the sweat equity to put with the good ideas. I miss a few things that I would like to have been more involved with, but thanks to the volunteers that we had working around there and all the volunteers in town, including Petopoulos and Ed Carew and all of the other people that are on all these same different committees all the time. They not only stepped up to the plate, but they were good in making sure that our homeless and the hungry and the needy had enough of everything. Plus the fact we're getting food donations from all different types of people giving drives. We even got a grant from a COVID organization, Community Affairs, that gave us a $20,000 grant for food for the needy. And as soon as we get it in one door, it's out the other. Nobody gets paid there. And what I'm saying, and I'm not patting anybody on the back, I don't want to mention names because there's so many people that do so much all the time. You might say one and miss another. But this is time for people to circle the wagons and join together and see what we can do to help everybody ease through this. The sooner we get back on our feet and the country acting as one government, we'll be happy. And that's all I've got to say.
Thanks, Isaiah.
Thank you, Councilman.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I appreciate what Isaiah said, and it sort of falls into the grain of what I'm hoping we can accomplish with either a committee or at least a special discussion regarding debriefing, how we handle it moving forward. This is not a new concept that Councilman Good is bringing. As a matter of fact, the efforts that were put forth by our predecessors with regards to how we handle Superstorm Sandy or something like Superstorm Sandy moving forward has reaped a lot of benefit. And I think that given how that's progressed, and Council President Sheridan can probably attest to that, there's a lot of benefit to examining how we did things and how we can do them better. And I think that's at the end of the day what we're trying to do. And I don't see a problem with that. Again, I'm my own worst critic. So I'm going to come to any discussion asking myself, what could I have done better? And that's what we can start off with. What could Councilman Fotopoulos have done better? And I'll learn from that. And that, I think, is what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to accomplish within the auspices of government and the way this the borough form of government. I think what we did was fantastic. It was good. It was fantastic in many cases. But I always think we can do better, and I think that's what we should strive to do. And I think that's what this committee or any discussion that we have debriefing or reviewing will accomplish. It can only be good. There's nothing bad about doing something like this.
Any further discussion?
I'd like to say one thing to the council and all the volunteers in this town. It's an honor and a privilege to work with most of you because you always give that 110%. We don't always agree on everything, and if we did, one of us isn't necessary. But the bottom line is, I have yet in 30 years in this town needed help from anybody where he or she didn't volunteer and give 100%.
Amen.
And so I don't believe we should challenge each other on anything other than, as Dennis just mentioned, what can we do and make it better? And as long as we be civil and disagree without being disagreeable, we're on the right path.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. This is Victoria. Exactly. I think that this committee is a debrief of the last 8 weeks see what went well, see what might not have gone well, and make a plan to move forward for the next however long this will be, taking that knowledge and using it in the right way.
So again, I don't think anyone's questioning a debriefing committee, but it goes back to Councilman Good also saying that everything has to come back to the full council. So is it a committee that stuff's being reviewed to for reopening, Councilman Good? There's two different things that's being discussed. There's a debriefing, which I think if we even have a snapper contest, there's a debriefing in this town. So, I mean, debriefing is everything in this town. That's a whole different topic than operations, which is what the request was. So, once again, Councilman Good, can you clarify which one it is you're looking for so we can get a better understanding and move on?
Mayor, there's two distinct concepts. Your conflation of them, tying an email that was sent a couple weeks ago to this committee is, I want to say, muddling the issue. One, I think that any policy decisions, whether or not the parking lot should reopen, whether or not some of the summer things should be canceled, should be kept on, should be delayed. I think that those are policy questions that the council as a whole should be advised upon. These items are, I guess, not emergent.
So that's not the committee. That's just in general.
That is no, yes, it is a separate and distinct issue. The committee that is on the new business is I was referring to more of call it a Monday morning review. And I'm still, like Councilwoman McDermott said, we're still in the midst of this. So obviously nothing can be determined now because we're still reacting. There are still going to be emergencies that may or may not pop up. So the point of putting it under new business was to get the council talking about it so that when finally we're into what everybody seems to be considered the new normal, we can look back and see what went right, what went wrong. Maybe we're writing down the procedures that should be followed. Kind of an open concept of how we as a borough and a government can prepare for the next time. So this committee is distinct and has nothing to do with whether or not the council should be notified or have the ability to discuss policy going forward within this present state of emergency. Understandably, there's going to be times where the governor is going to be shooting out executive orders, and we're going to have to react to that. But there are going to be a number of times of which the governor is going to shoot an executive order saying, we're going to move into phase 2, which allows for A, B, C, D, and E. And the question becomes to the municipality whether or not to allow A, B, C, D, and E. And I think that the council and the council members are each going to have individual opinions about whether or not A and C are good for Keyport, B and D are good for Keyport, none of the above. And I think that that's a discussion of which the council should at least have the ability to discuss. So there are two distinct things. One is a committee that just going to be looking and hoping that where to streamline this again. So if it ever happens again, we may be ready. That's completely separate than whether or not the rest of the council should be informed and or allowed to chime in on policy decisions going forward. And the policy decisions going forward are not just going to be limited to, state of emergency things. That's what this council does. It determines whether or not we are going to change the ordinance to allow outdoor cooking like we did last year, whether or not we're finally going to update the zoning ordinance to allow live music, which we only took out sometime, I think, 2 years ago. So these policy decisions must be discussed, and that's the way you determine it. So to the extent you're asking me if they're together, they're not. One is a policy decision, and the other one is a committee that we may or may not construct to look back and see during this state of emergency with regard to this virus, could we have done better? Could we have done worse? Do we need to write stuff down? Or everything was perfect and there's nothing that needs to be done? So that's what I'm saying.
I can assure you that report will not say that. That would be too simple, right? There's no way we could say this, the whole thing was perfect, that's for sure. And I know I definitely was not perfect. Okay, so
again, Mayor, nobody's disputing the amount of work that you've put in. It's honestly, it's amazing. I've said, for a number of people that asked, that the amount of work and the amount of time that you put into dealing with this was far and above the salary of which we pay a mayor. I would have to guess that at times this was probably more of a full-time job than your regular job. All I'm saying at the end of the day is that maybe if you had something and said, here's, just look at directive number 3, it would have made your life easier. So
no, I agree. I'm just commenting on your last sentence about, if there was nothing, and I was saying that that's definitely not true. So there should be something written down somewhere because it definitely was not perfect. So I'm agreeing.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, so the 2 resolutions are going to be circulated tomorrow by Mr. Moon. You guys will vote on both of those. So put them in one email. Okay. And then the only other thing is there's a Councilwoman Pacheco. Did you want to have advice for to do a committee on who's going? Because if we don't have I guess we need to decide this. If we don't have another meeting for another month, which wasn't scheduled because election day was supposed to be in June, do you want to, we should identify who is going to talk with the Ambaric team, so then that way people know that the conversations are happening?
I believe Mr. Moon has already set up a meeting. Was that from you, Mark?
I asked for availability. I haven't contacted
but
them yet.
I forget who was on that email.
Oh, it was just the people that
I was on it too, but right. So I just didn't know. Did you want others so that do you want me not to be on it and Dennis because he serves both environmental and harbor?
I had suggested Dennis should be on it, yes, because he's the actual perfect councilman to have that conversation. So yes, but
right.
Yeah.
So it can't be 4 of us on that call to have, so.
Topoulos, and was it Joe that was on the email? I'm looking for the email right now.
Well, no, it was myself and Joe and you, because I believe Council
Email that
Sheridan
Mark sent
as finance.
I'm speaking about.
Yeah.
What did you say? So finance, because it's a financial thing too, especially with the last time they were here. So that's what I'm asking. So do you want this conversations with the Ambaric to be Councilman Fotopoulos, Councilman Sheridan, and then it would either be you or I because we can't both be on it. So if you're already engaged in these conversations with Ambaric, then I'll defer you and then you guys can report.
Actually, Mayor, I'm on the Finance Committee too.
Right. So, and it's a harbor and an environmental thing. So I think, and then that way you guys could actually have those committees you know, I just don't know that all of council was aware that the Vanguard conversations were happening. And since we don't meet for a month, I didn't want those conversations to go further without at least there being awareness on who was going to sit and have conversations with them.
I think it needs to be reminded that this was just a simple outreach email. I think that the smaller group meeting with Ann Barrett to be able to report back to the larger group is the way to go. And I think that it should be myself, Councilman Patopoulos, Councilman Sheridan, and the administrator.
And Mr. Henshaw and Mr. Moon. Okay. So I just wanted you to know that I wasn't going to be on that, and that just for transparency reasons. But only so that the three of you can be is why I'm saying that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have new business?
The garbage issue down at the waterfront, I had a thought about maybe investing in some big bellies, which would relieve the efforts of our DPW and also prevent the seagulls from ripping the garbage out of the cans. It's a thought.
So the two big bellies that are up on the top of the mini park used to be where the old gazebo was, down below on the other part where the picnic tables go in Fireman's Lot. Other than that, they can't go anywhere else because they can't get that close to the salt water. But I had identified multiple times different garbage cans that I had gone down to other beach towns that the seagulls don't get into. And then the other idea would be no trash cans, and it's carry in, carry out. But as far as the garbage in Fireman's Lot, this has been going on for decades. I could tell you Easter Sunday 2 years ago, I filled my entire car with leaf bags of all of the debris I picked up, because at that point in time, there wasn't approval for weekend help year round. And I've been asking for that since, to have a DPW person on 4 hours a day, Saturday and Sunday. But that personnel line hasn't been approved. So as far as a big belly, we wouldn't really be able to put them other than where the two used to be. You know where I'm talking, where the bus dropped off for the music festival, Councilman? You know what I'm talking about?
I don't think, I mean, that's doable, but yeah, you're right. I understand. I didn't think salt water would be an issue, but I could see why it would be. I'd be interested in seeing the solutions that you investigated moving forward, because we do have a responsibility not only to the businesses, but to the neighbors in our town. As far
And
as
the other option that's also been on the table since I think Mayor Bergen was mayor was carry in, carry out, and not have any garbage cans down there, because then the seagulls won't have anything to pull out.
Right.
So that's an option you guys could pursue also. So, because I will say it wasn't bad for a couple weeks because the garbage cans were all removed when the parking lot was closed, and then when we first reopened it, and it was some people wanted them put back, so they put them back, and now the seagulls are pulling everything out. So
we put them back when the fish reopened, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I think they put them back not when the fishery reopened, but when they opened the lot to 50%. I think they just went back last weekend, actually, the garbage cans. Yeah.
It was only placed at that lot.
I have a question for Michelle real quick, and possibly Mark. Were we going to discuss the charter boat insurance tonight, or?
I was actually going to talk about it in the attorney report, but we can talk about it now if you'd like.
Okay.
There was a request to reduce, in the license agreement with the charter fishing boat company, there was a request to reduce the required insurance coverage from $2 million to $1 million. While normally non-material changes can be sort of made without formal discussion, this was kind of, in my opinion, was sort of borderline. So I just wanted to make sure that the board, the council did not have any issues with allowing for that change to the license agreement.
Now, can you clarify real quick? I'm sorry, let me get a clarification real quick, Councilwoman. It's 1 million and then another $500,000 in liability?
The liability originally was $2 million, and I guess the email I saw was the request was to lower it from $2 million to $1 million.
Madam Clerk, can somebody mute the music that's going on? Whose phone number? There you go.
Yes, it was the requirement in the agreement is 2 million liability, personal injury, and 500,000 for property. And he's requesting to lower the 2 million for the personal injury liability to 1 million.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My wife is sneezing.
God bless you.
So I have a question. Do we not have all our other entities do $2 million as well? For example, the Canoe for You, isn't everything at $2 million?
Can we confirm that? Because I do recall having this conversation with the Harbor Commission last year, and the 2 million being completely in line with what we were asking of others. That's my recollection. I think that's probably your recollection too, Councilwoman McDermott.
Yes, it is.
If we can confirm that, that would help guide the conversation for me.
And just to give historical context, this was also in line with other insurance requirements in other boroughs and towns in the area as well. So we did, at that point when we kind of evaluating this, the former administrator did a whole analysis with insurance to make sure that we were in line with other areas, like other businesses that follow this.
So then it's not. So then I think we should keep it at 2 million.
Yeah, that was my recollection of the conversation, and also the decision. He'd actually asked this exact request last year, so we did look into this. It was in line with other municipalities. I had thought it was in line with Captain John, but perhaps I'm incorrect about that statement. But it was certainly in line with what we were asking for others as well.
Captain John was 1.5, I think.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I might be incorrect about that.
Right. But again, this went under the new, and that's because of the new ownership. We went into the whole research to make sure we were being fair. And that also impacted Canoe for You and all the other businesses that we have that may need to have insurance.
Yeah, that's my recollection of that conversation. Right around this time last year too, I think.
Now that we're on record about it, that's fine. I'm good with that. I recommend we keep it at $2 million based on Councilwoman McDermott's and Councilwoman Pacheco's recollection.
Okay.
Sound good?
Do we need to do something or not do something?
Well, no, I guess if
we just tell them no.
Yeah, the answer is no.
Okay.
Unless we need to vote about it.
No, I mean essentially it would have been, the request would be to change the approved agreement, but it sounds like the answer is no, so we don't need to do anything because the previous version of the agreement would be the one that has the approval of the council.
Right.
Do we have to vote to not change the license? No, we would have to vote to change if we were going to change it, correct, Mark?
That's exactly
right.
it.
Okay.
That's it.
So we don't need a vote. Okay. So, any other new business?
It's, I guess, talking about the skateboards only would fall under the unfinished business with Main Street Park. Can we just cram that in there?
Yeah. So essentially,
After, no, wait. After, yeah, when we get to old business.
Oh, no problem.
Anyone else have anything under new business? Unfinished business is the Main Street Park, which we've already identified as a construction site. And I guess the ordinance was circulated after it was vetted through recreation and
it wasn't
the police
it wasn't
department.
vetted through recreation.
And well, now it is, right?
Yes.
So now you
Well,
have to wait for recreation to meet, right?
No, the ordinance part, I have to basically, the resolution was not the entire new thing that I received with the
Today.
meeting June, so
Okay.
not yet.
Okay. So did you have any other questions, Councilman Stavros, on this?
Oh, yeah. First, the answer to the reason why I wanted to see this brought up was because a citizen asked if we would be ready to open the park when the okay was given. And the answer is yes, if it falls after June, which is the scheduled time frame to open it anyway, right?
So
No,
Yeah, the problem is this. It's all about getting approval for coverage for the park for premise liabilities.
Yep.
And that's really going to be dictated by the GIF.
Okay.
They need to be able to send out, and part of their requirement is that, one, we have to adopt rules and regulations, which is why the ordinance was being circulated. Two, they have to basically perform an inspection of the premises before they can formally approve it. And then three, they have to vote at their meetings to authorize the addition of the park as part of for coverage of the premise liability. So unfortunately, this is a situation where it's a little bit out of our hands. They have the GIF's not really doing it because of the state of emergency. Their inspections are being postponed indefinitely at this point. They have not given me a clear sense of when they're going to be available to come out. But my approach has been to basically do as much as we need to do internally, administratively, so to get it done. And basically, that's where we are. And unfortunately, I can't say that this is definitely going to be open by June or whatnot. It really depends on when we can get our inspections done.
Okay, but not for those, but not for the GIF response. We obviously would love to open it when approval is given, but we are waiting on GIF then. Okay.
Right.
So let's go to the skateboards only. This is a decision that this is a recommendation from GIF or from the Recreation Committee.
The rec committee. Go ahead.
So what had happened was that the GIF won't approve coverage if we allow skateboarding and bicycling like at the same time.
Right.
So what they said the only way they would work was, one, they need to get confirmation from the designers that the obstacles and the ramps and things like that are designed for both items, and two, they would have to segregate times for use of the park so that skateboarding would be for certain hours of the day, and that bicycling would be for certain hours a day, and then it would be so designated, and that there would be a requirement of some sort of an elevated level of monitoring to enforce and make sure those time limits are being respected. So there was discussion of that as well. The
Discussion
recommendation
between the GIF and you, or a discussion on I'm trying to.
So basically they said that here's your two choices: leave it at just skateboarding, or have both, but make sure that there's separate times and extra monitoring, things like that. So fine, I had sort of set up the rules for both ways, and I forwarded to the Recreation Committee, and their comments were to prefer to limit it just for skateboarding, explaining that historically the park came about and all those other things, and that it was more consistent with basically it would be easier, one, to monitor and enforce, to have it just skateboarding rather than having these separate times, as well as my understanding was historically the goal was, it was really sort of skateboarders and enthusiasts, they were the real driving force behind the park as well. And so that was the recommendation. Now, ultimately, this body, the ordinance is going to be brought to this body, and there will be a vote. And so that's basically how it ended up that way.
So I get the bicycle issue. I don't particularly agree with it, but it's not something I'm gonna, I mean, I've only had 2 citizens come up to me about the bicycling, asking if bicycling would be permitted. I will say that when people thought the park was open, it was mainly bicycles that were using it at that moment. And, but my main concern is that if we say skateboarding only, then we're eliminating other wheeled recreation, which are, let me ask you, are we eliminating other wheeled recreation that traditionally will cohabitate with skateboarders, like scooters and inline skates.
Well, skating would be skateboarding, and inline skating would fall under that category. I may need to confirm that with the GIF, but I can do that. My understanding, based on my conversations with them, was that inline skating would be allowed. Scooters is a different, probably not for scooters, but so that's sort of, I can get clarification from the GIF, but my understanding is scooters would not be allowed.
Okay, so no scooters. It would be inline skating and skateboarding, and that's it.
We do not know about inline skating
Right.
yet. That is
Again,
not
I have
been
to
confirmed.
confirm that, Councilman. But my understanding was the term skating was skateboarding and inline skating. But again, I don't want to state that as a certainty, but I can confirm that with the GIF just to confirm the policies.
The difficult thing with that is going to be enforcement. If you say no bikes, we either have to have a manager there while it's open, making sure that only skateboards are on there and that everybody's following the rules, or we're going to get shut down. It's not going to work out.
Well, there's always,
my experience with skaters is that even when bikes are allowed, they tend to coexist, because the actual notion of having a skate park makes sense, that they don't want to screw up the opportunity to have a skate park. But that was years ago. Like I said, I thought the notion of separating the time was a good notion and minimize the time for bikes. But again, I defer. It's just, it seems suited for all of that activity. And my understanding is that Spawn Ranch said that it would be okay for bikes, didn't they?
Equipment-wise, yeah. The structures themselves could be. They said that engineering-wise, the equipment could be used for.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other unfinished business from council members? Attorney's report?
One last item from me. The flood prevention ordinance that was passed on first reading, I believe 2 meetings ago. It's been referred to the planning board for review as far as compliance with the master plan and any other recommendations. So that's just wanted to give the council an update on that.
Thanks. Okay, can I have a motion to open to the public? And when we open to the public, it's 5 minutes per person from any member of the public that wishes to speak.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Member of the public? Then we have to unmute first. Okay. Well, I would like to go back to Ed Ballou if he's still on the call, because we had asked him to wait what we thought would be a couple minutes. But if he's still on the call, I would like to give him first dibs, because he thought the public session before was when we were under the adoption of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Ballou?
Ready for me?
Yes.
Okay. Matt, I can tell you, you sound like an attorney more and more, all the time.
I don't know if I'll take that as a compliment.
Well, I don't think I mean it as a compliment. So I deal with attorneys quite often. I think you know that. However, I like you and everything. You gotta get down to earth with us. However, Mayor, I'd like to ask a quick question other than the virus at this second. And I know I only have 5 minutes. However, do we ever do anything more with the dumpsters? I know we have an ordinance. I know some of the rules have been followed. I know a lot of them have not been. I think the last time I had talked to you, that there was, they were warned and so on and so forth. That's my first thing. Now, if you don't mind, don't answer that yet, because I'm going to get some other things in, if I can. The water plant. We had brown water. Every time you guys fool with the water, and you know I'm highly against the water plant. I think you spend too much money there and never recuperate from it. And every time you fool with the water plant, we get brown water. However, when we have filtration systems in different stores and Burlews especially, there's about 16 filters that have to be changed every time you fool around with it because it clogs our filters up. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not good. So that would be number 2. And you can answer that, you know, just let me get done real quick. On the benches that you had removed, now the state government, or governor, he lays the rules down, and also you have to do is enforce it. So it pretty much takes you guys off the hook. All you got to do is enforce whatever he wants, because he's going to get what he wants, and that's it. So I think that might be a plus for you guys. So you don't have to make too many decisions. And one of my last things I want to talk about is the parks. And you opened up the Fireman's Park halfway. You got, Fireman's Park. You got that opened up a little ways, halfway, with some supervision, which is pretty much out of control, even with the supervision. Main Street Park has no restrictions. Old Glory has no restrictions. Division Street has no restrictions. American Legion Drive has been blocked off now for quite some time. And I would like to see that park at least half open and give the people some opportunity to come down. I think everybody knows the rules with the mask. Everybody stays the distance. I don't think you have to preach it into anybody else's head. And that's my theory on that. As far as the benches goes, you know, moving all the benches out of the way when you could have just very simply went by it. There was too many people sitting on the bench. You blow the siren from the cop car and tell them get the hell off the bench. So it's like a waste of time. And then one of the last thing I want to say is listen to you guys talk tonight. I think Aberdeen has a better solution when they have a mayor and council. And I'm not knocking you guys because I praise you. Even you, Matt, I'm only kidding you about being an attorney, and I know you are an attorney. However, they get together before your meeting or the day before, and they have everything spelled out with what they're going to do. You actually sound like a bunch of little crybabies over here tonight, and I don't think that's supposed to be that way. I mean, when you got to be a little more organized. And I'm not knocking this. I know you guys are all fairly new, and Mayor, you did work very, very hard, and I'm glad Matt praised you for that, because I really think that you did also. And you got a tough job, and you came in at a bad time as mayor. I don't know if anybody else would have done what you did. So on that, I don't want to take up any more time. And as far as that park goes in the back, that's a Green Acres Park, and from my understanding, that should be open, you know, and the people should be allowed to go there and sit there. I seen a lady get chased off a chair the other day because she was sitting there all by herself, minding her own business, probably about 50 years old, and I'm not knocking the cops because he's directed to tell her to move. I just don't see it's necessary any longer. You know, you can't keep beating this dead horse. It's the bar, as far as I'm concerned, is over with. Everybody knows the directions, and all you got to do is implement it. Thank you. If you want to answer me, that's fine. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to answer you. Thank you very much. Oops, sorry. Are you there? Okay, good. So in regards to the dumpsters, there have been other dumpster enclosures since we first started talking about them. I know Mike Stubbs is now enclosed, as well as Italian Touch. there probably are some others that still need to be done. And we can follow up with property maintenance on that again and see where their latest is, as far as whether any more summonses have been issued or not. I can definitely ask, Tom, can you ask, Mr. Mulcahy for an update on dumpsters, please? Dumpster enclosures. In regards to the water treatment plant, yes, I know you were not in favor of the financial aspect of that water treatment plant. But when it did go online, it was not necessarily in timing with the hydrant flushing. The hydrant flushing happens twice a year, which we do put out in the newspapers and publicly post like we're required to. Two people had reached out to me and said that they saw a comment on social media. And other than that, I was told that one resident went to a councilman and said something about their water, but I didn't get anything on that. And we checked our queue system and my email system as well as the administrator's email, and we hadn't received anything. So we do know that two people did contact Denise after the latest announcement went out on social media. And I believe she was talking with that person as far as what options they had. But you bring up a good point about the filters. And maybe next year when we do, or in the fall when we do fire hydrant flushing, maybe we can work with KBBC to put out an announcement to the businesses as well as the hydrant flushing. So thanks for pointing that out, Mr. Blue. In regards to the benches, so when the benches were first taken off the promenade, that was to widen the promenade for walking, because that was when everyone was saying the 6 feet apart and keep 6 feet distance. So if you walked closer to the railing and then closer and then tried the promenade down at the waterfront here on American Legion Drive are 3 5-foot panels. So originally we thought if everyone walked towards the railing and then everyone, kind of back when we were in elementary school, you stayed to your right. And then people stayed to the grass side. The problem was then they were going around the benches and the garbage cans. That's originally why the benches were clustered and taped off. And then when the governor reopened the state parks in that executive order, I think it's Executive Order 133, I could be wrong. So don't quote me on the executive order number, but it was definitely this reopening of the state parks executive order. In that executive order, they then gave guidance to counties and then put restrictions on municipal parks. And we had to adhere to all of the same restrictions they were doing in the state parks at that point. And that includes 50% parking, as well as no one is allowed to sit at picnic tables or benches or structures. So I could assure you that the police really do not want to have to monitor this any more than you're talking about it, because it is a headache. And we're known for people coming here to eat, right? They get takeout food, and that's exactly what everyone's doing now is all takeout food. But we are not allowed to have anyone sitting on a bench or picnic table. So a lot of the picnic tables were removed, the ones that are not permanently, put into the ground. So, and in regards to the parking, so that it has to be 50% at all the parks. So last council meeting, it was decided by council, instead of doing 50% of each parking lot, which would not be the same as municipal parking lots, they would just do 50% in cumbersome. So that's why the American Legion Drive was open. But earlier in the meeting, it was discussed that because Captain Hartley is going to be sailing, I think as of this weekend, they are going to be opening 50% of the American Legion lot, which in theory, then they should also be closing 50% of the other lots, but that's just going to become a headache. So we are leaving that to the chief and the OEM, unless council has anything else to add to that.
I do. First,
I mean, to the chief, I'm sorry, I said council, I meant to chief and OEM and the administrator. But those are your answers as far as my updates, Mr. Baloo.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the info.
No problem.
I have a question.
Councilman Papoulis, what did you want to say?
I think you were probably, I was the only one that had an exchange with Tom about the water. Is that true? You mentioned one council person had one person contact them.
I also reached out to the administrator.
Okay, so just so we're clear, I mean, there's 3 people on at this meeting that I talked to about it, that had called me, and there were numerous others. So it was an issue. We recognize and acknowledge that.
I do want to know, I was never contacted as liaison.
Okay.
So, just point of order with
As
that.
liaison to what?
The DPW, that's water, right?
Oh, okay. So the DBW, okay, all right. I didn't know that there was a liaison to the water plant, but I was calling directly to the administrator.
I reached out directly.
Right. And as far as the benches are concerned, I was under the impression that we pulled the benches because we didn't want people sitting on them.
The promenade benches were originally because of the widening of the promenade. And then as further guidance was coming down, then it was because we couldn't sanitize them. And then we put up notices in all the parks indicating that none of the benches or anything in the park could be sanitized. So we thought that would be enough because we've now told everyone they're not sanitized. But then they came back from a state executive order saying that we are not allowed to have anyone sit in any bench or table.
Okay. And
now, whether we could go into opinions or not opinions, but that's not where we're at, and that's not,
No, I just wasn't clear. I didn't know it was a right of way thing. And then just to clarify, I was under the impression, Elmer, we can all hear you, by the way, but I was under the impression that the parking lot at Fireman's Park, as a matter of fact, I think we had this discussion, was 50% closed. And it looks like it's just about 50% closed.
It is.
But where does the calculation come from? If you can steer me in the right direction, because I want to look at this. The calculation is all of the parking lots in town have to be closed 50%. So
if they're a parking lot. So if they're parked, that's attached to the Rossi. So American Legion Drive, Fireman's Lot, those are all parks on the Rossi. The boat ramp is part of the Rossi. Pine Street lot, I don't know who that is. I don't know who that was.
If we open up
Street,
I'm sorry, Mary, go ahead.
Pine Street lot is part of the Rossi. So you are allowed to have 50%. You have to have all your parking at 50% capacity.
Okay, so that clarifies it. I thought we were saying if we opened up all of the waterfront park parking, anyway, that clears it up. All parking lots, whatever ones are open, just have to be at 50% capacity. We're not using.
No, not all. Not all. You have to use 50% of your parking has to be closed off. So the lot that Mr. Ballou is referencing behind Old Glory is not attached to a park, so it's not part of the Rossi.
Okay.
So that does not need to be 50%.
Okay. Gotcha.
Got it? Okay. You're welcome. Mr. Moon, am I correct?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't miss the last part.
About the 50% parking is all reference to parking.
Yes.
Not municipal parking, correct.
Right, it's for park parking. That's the executive order.
Okay. Right? Okay, next member of the public,
Hello?
Mr. Lane.
Oh, you're on.
Hello?
You're on.
Hello.
No, somebody else is trying to.
This is Mike Lane.
Okay.
My first question relative to ordinance R162-20 to raise the 20 million plus. I asked what the tax rate was going to be to raise that 20 million plus. The information that Joe Sheridan gave me only raises about a quarter of that 20 million plus, because that 20 million plus covers all the county expenses, open space, all the education expenses, all the borough expenses, including library and open space. And so this year, the tax rate was 2.54 per hundred. What is it to raise this 84,398?
Joe, I think that question could be answered when we have the hearing on the budget. I mean, no one's prepared for that question tonight. So I think Mr. Lane needs to wait until we have the budget hearing on the 16th of June.
Pardon me, but you just passed a resolution to bill the residents of Keyport $20,084,398. You passed that resolution tonight. You don't know what the tax rate is. I'll give you a feeling. The three members of the Finance Committee all will have a tax increase over 4%, over $300. So the information from the Board of Education that it was a $10 increase and from the borough that it's a $67 increase does not take into account the fact that the tax ratables in the borough went up almost as much as the budget. So that's why there is such a small change in the tax rate for the budget, but it's not a reflection of the billing that's going to be generated.
Yeah, but we don't have any jurisdiction over the school or the county.
That's not my question. My question is, you just approved billing $20 million plus. What is the tax rate?
Well, the reason why we have to send out early tax bills is because we don't have a rate, and we want to make sure that we get cash flow in. It has nothing to do with the rate at this point. It's what it was until the county strikes a new tax rate.
No, I'm going to get a tax bill from the tax assessor in about a month. And my tax bill is going to go up over $800.
I don't know where you got that information at, but that's not the information we have from our CFO.
It's a very simple calculation.
Not really.
Bear with me. You have last year's tax rate, 2.54 per 100. You multiply that by the evaluation and you generate a certain amount of money. We now that's last year's valuation. We now have a new valuation. When you're going to multiply it by almost the same tax rate, around 2.57, to generate this 20 million. So you're not giving good information at all in terms of what the impact is going to be on the taxpayers of Keyport.
Again, I'm going to tell you that your information is not correct. And, you can bring all the information, all the questions you want to bring when we have the meeting, June 16th, the budget hearing. And you can bring all those questions up at that time.
You're still missing the point.
All we did tonight is allow us to go out and send tax bills out early because we don't, we need to have the cash flow later on in the year, and we have to make sure that the county strikes the new tax rate. So that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, and when the resolution says that the bills are going to be for over $20 million, doesn't it? The exact
not
words.
to my knowledge.
The exact words in the resolution. You ought to read the resolution then.
You're not getting billed $20 million extra. I don't know where that came from.
No, I said the total tax levy is going to be $20 million. So what's the tax rate?
Mike, offhand, I believe that the tax rate went up about 2 cents per 100. I think it might be slightly larger than that. So I don't have the exact number in front of me, but with regard to the municipal portion of the tax rate, I think is what your question is.
I don't care about the municipal. I'm concerned about the total bill that I'm going to get.
Right. You asked, and I said the general rate, and again, I don't have what the school went up, but we have the municipal portion went up about 2 cents per 100. I think we took what the school did, and that's how you came up with that number as a preliminary.
I have run the calculations. Tax rate is very simple to calculate. you figure out how much money you want to generate, and you know what the assessed value of the borough is. And the assessed value of the borough, and I was provided all this information, and I shared it with the borough administrator. The assessed value of the borough went from 740 million and change up to 785 million and change. And it's a 6.12% increase. And you can take those tax ratables, and you take the amount of money that you want to collect, and you can calculate what the new tax rate is. And you're absolutely right. It's very close to 2.54. I calculated about 2.57 to generate your 20 million. And so with the tax rate changing very little, but with residents getting a 6+% increase in their average valuation, they're going to be looking at more than $78 plus $10 from the board.
Mike, you're assuming that everybody went up. So you're telling that the average homeowner, you're saying that everybody's getting that. Some people's tax rates or assessed value remained the same. Some actually went down, and then some went up. So when you say,
right,
you can't say that everybody's going to be getting a $400 increase due to the increase in the tax rate.
And that's not what I said.
No, that's exactly what you said.
I said
that the citizens' houses are going to be everybody's going to be getting a $400 increase because everybody's house went up the extra 6% when you're talking about averages.
I shared with you the 3 council people are all getting more than 4%, and they're all going up more than $300.
I'm one of those council.
That's right.
I'm not happy, but it is what it is.
And if you remember when the reassessments were done last year, we put together a table of 20 random properties. I've run the calculations on those 20 random properties, and the average increase across the 20 properties is $370, and it's about a little bit more than a 5% increase on the 20 random properties. So I just want the dialogue to reflect the fact that you have 2 parts to the equation. One is change in tax rate. We didn't change much at all because the property valuations went up almost as much as the tax levy went up. Second item, the pump station. I will send, Mr. Good, I will send you the documentation that validates that the pump station is not associated with the townhouses. It's associated with the approved construction of the 24 apartment units, and it needs to be enforced. Second, the 317 Beer Street. I accept your input on the property boundaries, but there is one other factor in here. This land that's been encroached upon is freshwater wetlands. And if you remember all the state criteria that impacted Bay Point construction, where they had to put a fence and you cannot trespass on wetlands, right? You remember that?
Sure.
Dennis, you remember that?
Sure.
All right, so how are we allowing this property owner to trespass on the wetlands, to clear the wetlands and turn it into a back lawn?
It's my understanding that the fence was approved, was it not?
The fence was approved, but the fence goes way back to, if you look at the surveys, back to 2011, way before the latest approval by Mr. Ballou. And I don't know that Mr. Ballou spent time checking that it was wetlands. I don't know that Mr. Baloo spent time checking on who owned the property.
Well, the
So-
fence
so my
was approved, so I think I think it stands that it becomes an issue, first and foremost, like Councilwoman McDermott said, between the two property owners, right? My neighbor has an encroachment on my property, and the issue is between us. As far as the wetlands is concerned, Mike, wouldn't it be an issue that you would bring to the DEP?
So you're going to force me to go that route. Okay.
No, how do we, if we approved it, how do we enforce? That's the question. And why would we? That's the question. I don't disagree with you as far as the encroachment is concerned. If it's all wetlands, it certainly shouldn't be there. But even your pictures show, and based on Trevor's explanation, even your pictures show that it's grass that's there.
Right, and you cannot cut and clear wetlands.
I think the there's a question, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but the jurisdiction on wetlands is the DEP. We don't even have jurisdiction to say yay or nay on that. It's a state issue.
Yeah, the borough would not be the proper body to be enforcing environmental regulation. That would be a state administrative function.
So the borough would not notify NJDEP. I mean, in the hearing, the documentation from NJDEP was presented. The borough, and I will send the borough the NJDEP documentation. All right. I didn't get any input on whether the Keyport Yacht Club letter regarding proposal for the four-way stop at Atlantic and First had been forwarded to CME. And who's going to be the full-time borough employee that works this $570,000 grant?
The administrator is reporting that it's Bob Kutchman is going to be the full-time employee. As far as the letter, I'd have to get back to you on that.
And what is Bob Cushman's role? What is he? Who is he?
The director of DPW.
Oh, DEPW? DPW?
Or superintendent. I don't know his exact, I don't have the official state title in front of me right now, but the superintendent, director of DPW. You guys have all DEP in my head now.
Is he the person that communications from the First Street neighbors would go to, or does it go to council?
It would go to council.
Again, I don't understand why an organization like Keyport Yacht Club, which brings so many people into town, pays so many taxes, that their letter was not listed under communications.
Thank you.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Michelle, we're probably going to have to take off mute again.
John Merla.
Oh, God.
Hi,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Merla.
Okay.
I don't know who that was. I don't know who that was. That was not me, for the record. Hi, Mr. Merla.
How are you?
Good.
You ready?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. 34 Broad Street, Keyport. Just to follow up, I know you used the word heat cup with the operation of the opening of the water plant, a couple of heat cups, but I'd like to direct this question actually to Councilmember McDermott, since it's her committee, and she seems to be abreast of what's going on there. You did mention in your report that you hadn't received any at all complaints about brown water. Is that true?
As liaison, I was not notified about it officially, no.
Were you notified that there was problems at the water plant?
I found out about it after the fact and when it was handled by the borough administrator. So I guess there was a miscommunication and understanding that I'm the DPW, the water plant falls on the DPW. Again, that's not a council member. What had happened, the council members were contacted, and then they brought it up to the borough administrator, which is a correct protocol, and it was being handled. So whether
Okay.
I'm contacted or not, nothing, operations continued. But again, there's a
Okay.
point of clarification that needs to be done here.
So most of the time you are notified if there's,
Yes.
problems? Okay. So were you notified of the, emergency down in the Lockport section that the water main collapsed? The same night we were out flushing hydrants?
Okay, you're talking about what, Front Street, correct?
No, I'm talking about, East 3rd Street.
East Third Street never had
There
any
was no-
flooding to it. That was
Had it
incorrectly
collapsed?
reported.
So where was
John, I
the,
actually told Councilwoman McDermott about it, and she corrected me on that. But I did
There was-
see her note. Yep.
it was down in Lockport, am I right?
It's
It
Lockport,
was
but
on
it was
East
not
Front
East Third
Street.
Street. East Front Street, yes.
Front?
Front, F-R-O-N-T.
It was on East Front Street, Mr. Marola, and DPW addressed
Okay.
that themselves.
Gotcha. And the other thing I wanted to ask you was, now, the mayor said the water was tested at the plant. And that test is the test that the borough does, yearly and sends out the report, or was that a different test? The borough is, has to test the water, by
Right,
law
and we
once a
send-
year.
Right, and we send out the report. No, I know the
Yes.
report you're talking about, but that report was actually just done a month ago, prior
Oh.
to it go, because of time frame. So, but as far as them testing the water and operations, the borough administrator, when I answered you, was because his phone wasn't off mute, and he said, yes, it had been tested. So it's not the
Okay.
yearly report. We wouldn't be due for that for another, I would say, 8 months.
So it was just tested at the plant to make sure it was good to drink, basically.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
regular testing, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. My second question is, last September, the section of Kearney Street off of Pershing was paved. The paving company, never actually came back and finished their work. I was just wondering, was that company paid?
Oh my God. Bless you, whoever just needs. All the paving contracts are not finished. I believe there's still a punch list that have to be done.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, was that Esposito that did that work?
Yeah.
It was. So they're coming back to finish up before they're not done yet.
They're actually doing the Main Street project right now too, and they still have things that they started last fall that they didn't complete correctly on Kearney Street.
Okay. And my third question and final is the JIF that we currently are in, the Joint Insurance Fund. Is there any other municipalities in the JIF that have a skate park?
I don't know about our particular JIF, but I know other towns that have skate parks
Oh,
are
no,
in
no, no, I
JIFs.
know
I
that
just,
too.
you know.
No, I know, but I mean, I'm seeing if there's some other town, it would be easier for us just to say, hey, listen, what rules and regulations do you guys follow? Because we're only going to have skateboards only. And I really think the JIF is just making us aware, and we have to make the public aware. I mean, someone brought up before about enforcement, and that is going to be very tough to enforce but if it's posted and it says skateboards only, basically you made the public aware that it's skateboards only. Cop's not going to be able to patrol that 12 hours a day to make sure it's only skateboards. It's going to be very hard.
Mhm.
And I was just saying, if there was another town that may be in the JIF, we could always check with them to see what rules and regulations they follow.
That's a good point.
It's just a thought. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Graham.
Elmer J. Graham Jr., 2022 St. Peter's Place. A few things on here. how's the search for a permanent borough administrator going?
I believe it's still underway. We're waiting to hear the latest update for the possibility of candidates moving forward with the next interview process.
Is Mr. Henshaw being considered?
That's a personnel matter we can't really discuss.
It's just a simple question. Whether
No, I
it just
understand.
requires the yes or no.
I can't answer that question.
All right. Next question is, on your agenda, I know Mr. Wayne brought this up, I think at the last council meeting. Why is the public comment section still placed before the consent agenda?
So that we can hear what the public wants, so that it could be addressed during the things when we're bringing them up throughout the agenda for the council.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be better if the consent agenda was read and stuff and discussed first, and then the public commenting right after?
Well, especially now that everything is out to the whole public, because we're scanning the whole packet to the website. So that way they've had time now to review, right? So before, when everyone used to come in and they would get it out of the book, they didn't even have a chance to review it except for 5 minutes before a meeting. Now they're getting it days in advance. So they have time to review it and ask us what they want us to go over when we get to those parts of the agenda. And it follows in suit with several other borough forum agendas that I had checked, like Mattawan.
Okay, I'll let the answer go at that. But on this last one, I realize you all are a Democratic borough council and everything like that, but you all need to challenge Governor Murphy and the state of New Jersey about some of his executive orders in regard to COVID-19. In my opinion, some, not all, but some of them are an overreach and stuff like that, but that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Yeah, turn me back.
You're on.
Next, Rob.
Hi, Mr. Schwab.
Two things. Quickly, Councilmember McDermott
Just
mentioned.
state your address. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Can you state
239
your
Main,
address?
239 Main
Thanks.
Street. Councilmember McDermott mentioned Farmers Market is going to open in 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks from Thursday. That's June 4th, not June 2nd. So our Farmers Market has always been on Thursday, 1 to 7, and it will be on Thursdays again, and it's Thursday, June 4th. The other thing, Councilmember Fotopoulos, earlier in your comments a few hours ago, you mentioned something about the south side of West Front Street closing one way for businesses. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I was going to say no park. If I said anything other than no parking, I was mistaken.
No
My
parking to
thoughts-
allow what?
What was that?
No parking to allow what?
Allow pedestrian traffic so we can allow tables and table service on the sidewalk, not unlike what they do in the city. So we would, and it's just a suggestion up for discussion. We would, during the crisis and until we can gather further in restaurants, we would find ways to allow for restaurants to have outside service. And that was one of my thoughts.
I mean, it's hopefully if it moves any further, maybe we can have discussion with KBBC involving the businesses. The first concern would be, as you know, parking is limited as it is on West Front Street. Typically in summers when we've done concerts, we've only closed the street, the entire street. I understand you're not talking about that. We've only closed it on the 3 locations. It looks like we're not going to have those events this year. But if you shut down parking so that you could have tables or whatsoever, I think it's a very limited amount of restaurants that would benefit versus the rest of the businesses on West Front Street that are then not able to have customers park in front of the stores.
You make a good point, and as I'm thinking about it, that's actually a fantastic point. And as I'm thinking about it, maybe it's just the portion between Borough Hall and Main Street to allow for Espresso Joe's and the
it's Espresso Joe's, the ice cream place, and the pizza place. So it's
Yep,
three
yep.
businesses, right? So it's the 3 businesses there.
We could talk about this offline, but like I
Okay.
said, I like how this conversation is going. If you want to have a call, I'm glad
Okay.
to. All right?
Sounds good.
Yep.
Anyone else on the call from the public that wishes to speak? Michelle, I think are those people self-muted or self-muted? Okay. So if anyone on the call, if you want to unmute yourself, if you would like to speak.
Mike Lane, I had a real quick question. If this is for the borough attorney, if we limit it to skateboards only and a bicycle rider gets hurt, does that reduce our liability?
What? With the,
As far as what, like,
Their ability to sue us.
well, you can't prevent anyone from suing anyone. So, but we can say that we have measures in place to prevent, to basically say that they were supposed to be doing what they were doing at the time. So,
Right. So that would that meet the JET criteria?
if we, yes.
Somebody's
that.
wife hit her husband's head against the wall.
I think we should mute.
Okay, anyone else from the public wish to speak?
I would like to say something. Ryan Berlew, 53 Pier Street.
What was your name again, please?
Ryan Berlew, 53 Pier Street.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
I got a comment in regards to the farmer's market. Wouldn't that take up space in the valuable parking spots down there at the fireman's parking lot?
So in the past, we would close off an entire row because we would have multiple vendors, but at this point, we're opening it up to one farmer's market vendor, so we will not close off all of the spaces that we would have in the past. And we can make adjustments to maybe on that one day, open up a couple extra spaces so that we can account for that.
How do we plan on controlling people down there shopping at the farmer's market as far as social distancing goes?
So how it usually works in the past is it's usually only a couple people at a time. So we will have cones marked 6 feet apart. They've actually offered to bring the items to the people's car if that was better.
Yeah.
So they're willing to work with whatever we can do to make it. They actually just, Mr. Straub had actually found out from them that they actually just started in Red Bank on Sunday. So they are completely open and adaptable to whatever we need to make sure everything is in place, just like at the supermarket. So they're actually saying that they'll handle the produce with gloves. And that way the customers aren't touching anything. So it's probably going to be safer there than anywhere else right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense. It's outside. I'm just worried the parking situation down there that we already have. We're going to add to the chaos, basically, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's only on Thursdays. It's from 1 to 7. So, it's, we did discuss possibly moving it to a different lot, but then no one's going to find it. And then that she's already hurting probably because of all the different, stores being, limited capacity and so forth. So, we are willing to adapt to what we have to make it work for everybody.
With all due respect, Mayor, every business in town I think is hurting right now.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I said, with all due respect, I think every business in town is hurting right now with what's going on.
Oh, I agree. It is. This is just awful. I agree.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else on the call wish to speak? From the public? Anyone else from the public wish to speak? If you would like to speak, then you just have to hit mute on your phone. Going once, going twice. Have a motion to close to the public?
Close.
Wait, did someone just say something? Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor. Great. Thank you. I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Good night. Stay safe. Be well.